goal meeting of February 10th. Carried. Go to second. So carried. Joining us this morning is Staff Sergeant Jim Harrison, representing the multi-agency accommodation project in regards to the lease extension on 7212 Riverside Drive.
Good morning, Mayor Conrad and Council. I'm going to ask Rick Friesen, who's also the Habitat for Humanity representative on the multi-agency accommodation project, to lead us off and provide Council with a very brief overview of the accommodation project and what we're all about. And then I will speak to our request for the extension of the lease. Thank you.
Thank you, your worship, members, council. Where am I going to that?
We actually, can we have your stick again? It didn't transfer on, sorry.
Give your presentation.
Howard.
You need it back.
No.
You know?
I can start without. A little bit of background. There was three social services that formed a collaborative group a few years back to create a single location where we could provide services to our joint clientele, and that's addressing those in our community who are hungry, who need shelter, and who are in need of affordable shelter or affordable housing. The three of us working together has reduced our administrative and operating overhead costs. Our efficiencies have increased. We are sharing resources, steering volunteers towards each other, and jointly applying for funding. As a result of this, we have been coming to this council chamber less frequently, asking for financial support. We have become much more independent. Oops, am I getting these things? But we had done some market and research. We did a feasibility study earlier on. Our meeting identified needs in the boundary as identified in the vital signs and the community first agreement, which identified the need for a low to medium barrier emergency shelter, which Beth's operates at 7212. Transitional housing for youth at risk, those suffering from mental illness, and those returning from detox and other treatment centers, which is what we were hoping to build in the near future. And supportive housing for those at risk of homelessness, more affordable permanent housing in Grand Forks. Habitat Boundary has recently become a regional affiliate. We've merged with folks in the West Kootenay, and we now look after all of Southeast BC. We've been here for a while. We have 14 homes in Grand Forks, 2 in Greenwood, 1 in Castlegar, 4 in Nelson, and 1 in Cranbrook at this time. Whispers of Hope has been operating since 2005. They are at the new facility and operate a thrift store and a community kitchen. Beth's was founded in 2010. It's a nonprofit society that provides a shelter, and in the future are looking at creating a transition housing unit. Our members of the advisory council include 2 representatives from each, and our chairperson is Wendy McCullough from Community Futures. And we have a board of directors for Beth's. I don't know if that is still current. No, okay. So I think I'll leave it there. We do have a memorandum of understanding that we operate underneath, and we carry it from there. So we are very grateful to City of Grand Forks for the provision of the facility that we now have Beth's and Whispers in. Part of Habitat's mission is to build a restore, and that will also include a joint boardroom for the 3 organizations, office space, and the transition housing units. There will also be about 900 to 1,000 square feet of additional space in this building for a future addition to our collaborative group if we can find another agency that wants to work together with us. I'll leave it at that. Turn it back to Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jim Harrison. I currently am the vice president, vice chair of BETS. I am a member, as Rick mentioned, of the multi-agency accommodation project partnership. And why we're before council today is originally when we occupied 7212 Riverside, both Whispers of Hope, Habitat for Humanity, and ourselves. Habitat for Humanity, as senior partner, holds the lease right now, currently granted by City Council for 5 years. And what has happened is, as we are endeavoring to raise funds to complete and construct the restore with 3 500 square foot transitional housing units above it, we've been doing all sorts of fundraising, and recently we've received a verbal approval from British Columbia Housing to grant $100,000 towards the construction of the 3 transitional housing units. The only provision that BC Housing has asked is, in order to protect their investment, they would like to see the lease extended to a 10-year period from the time that they provide the $100,000 grant. So that's what we are here before council to request, is that the lease at 7212 at Riverside Drive be extended for a period of 10 years in order that we may secure the grant from BC Housing to proceed with construction of the restore and the transitional housing units, which we are hoping, going after other funding, we do have other funding that's coming into place, that we may be able to actually start construction in the spring of this year. How long that will take, I'm not sure, but again, collaborative effort of the three different agencies to construct this building and provide an integrated service for people at risk of being homeless in our community and homeless people in our community. So that's what we have to offer, and certainly I would appreciate that council give positive consideration of our request. Thank you.
Debate.
May I ask a question? The extension that you're requesting, what date of effect would you be asking? Like from the current date, like or today, or?
Yes, we'd be looking for the current date today, or perhaps when the building permit for the new extension building that we will be building on the site, when that building permit is granted.
Okay, so I'm just thinking of has your grant application been submitted? Have you submitted, has the grant application been submitted?
No, we're in the process of it, and part of that application is to have the approval of City Council to extend the lease. That is one of the provisions that they want on the grant.
Okay, so but the actual document doesn't have to be until,
no,
it's just a resolution from council and supporting the 10-year extension.
That's what we're looking for.
Okay,
exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor, we're shaking.
How does this thing out here? I really did break it last time. Oh, sorry.
I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay, excellent. So looking through the lease here, the only thing you're looking to change is that from 5 to 10 years. That's it.
That's correct.
Okay, and secondly, if yeah, well, thank you. If this grant application is not successful, would it revert right back to the 5-year, or do you want to stick with the 10-year? The reason I ask this is after the UBC had a meeting with the minister responsible, I got a feeling that maybe 10 years wouldn't be long enough to get the
They had
grant funding.
requested a minimum of 10 years, and that's why we're putting the 10-year request before council. Yes.
If you feel that it's possible with the 10-year, then I'll support it. But back to, is this only 10 years only if you're successful with the grant? Or
Yes.
10 years regardless?
Yeah, I would say if we're successful with the grant, however, regardless we won't do, because we are attempting to obtain other funding for this. And if we can go to people and say, yes, we have a solid 10-year lease, it would certainly give us leverage to obtain further funding to complete the project.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Councillor Hammond?
Oh, yeah.
So am I hearing right that you're putting housing above the restore?
That's correct.
But you have a restore on Sagamore. Are you planning on moving it to Riverside?
Actually, yes, that is Habitat for Humanity's plan, is to move that. They're currently in rental accommodation on Sagamore, and they would like to be in their own facility.
So the building, the lot, the vacant lot beside where you currently are will be built into?
That's correct. And the buildings will be attached by a breezeway and a facade across both buildings to bring it up to a better looking piece of property.
Have you done a survey with the residents that own property on that street?
No, we have not. However, prior to us occupying the building and commencing operations with Whispers of Hope and the Boundary Emergency and Transitional Housing Emergency Extreme Weather Shelter, we did hold an open house with all of the residents and invited all of the residents. And we had over 50 people attend that open house and actually look at the concept plans that we had for the property and received very favorable comments.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Washagan?
Thank you, just give me 1 second here. Well, with that being said, then I would recommend that the committee of the whole recommends that council refer the request for the multi-agency accommodation project for a lease extension on 7212 Riverside Drive to the February 10th regular meeting.
Do I have a second? Okay. So carried. Any other? All in favor? All opposed? So carried.
Habitat for Humanity of Southeast BC is also in transition. I just beg you to bear with me for 2 seconds. I would like to introduce our new executive director, Bob Huff, who is taking my position. I have retired as of the beginning of this month and am now 100% volunteer again and loving it. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to welcome Graham Watt, Kettle River Watershed Management Plan Steering Committee, to request for council endorsement of the Kettle River Watershed Management Plan. Good morning, Mr. Watt.
Thank you very much. I'll just start with passing out. You probably have seen a copy of this. It's just for expert copy we can through. Thank you. It's always easier reading these things in paper than in PDF. So, thanks for having me this morning. I'm Graham Watt. For the last 2.5 years, I've been coordinating the Kettle River Watershed Management Plan for the regional district of Kootenay Boundary. And I'm really excited, over the last 2 years, we worked with a large network of people to build a watershed plan that could act as a tool, act as a platform for great work and collaboration coming up over the next few years. So this morning I wanted to, on behalf of the steering committee of the Kettle River Watershed Management Plan, and that's all the elected officials from the RDKB, the directors from the Boundary Region, and the manager of planning and development, the RDKB, Donna Dean, formerly Mark Anderson, so the purpose is to request endorsement of the watershed plan. So over the last 2 years, we've had, it's detailed in there, but we had numerous public meetings, a large survey of the watershed, many stakeholder meetings of a group of 30 people who were involved in developing this and considered a really broad range of issues. So this is much larger than simply a question of water supply and demand. It also considered the aquatic ecosystem, the state of fisheries, the effects of resource management on water resources. It's a comprehensive initiative and produced an integrated result. And I really wanted to thank the City of Grand Forks for participation in that effort, both through funding as well as regular participation of staff and council members. It was truly a really big part of that effort that brought it forward. So the first phase of the plan, 2011-2012, was a comprehensive report of water supply, demand, water quality, and the state of fisheries and the systems that support them by Summit Environmental. And that work kind of underpinned some further technical work that we've been doing on the state of riparian or streamside ecosystems, further work that's been done in various parts of the watershed on aquifer conditions, on water quality, on water use, water demand. And together that really supported kind of the information needs to support the vision that the community came up with. So the vision that was brought forward through the plan was we envision a healthy, resilient, and sustainable Kettle River watershed, which functions to meet the needs and values of its communities, who in turn act as stewards of the watershed. So there are challenges to meeting those goals, and those challenges come from everything from high water use across the watershed to a lot of impacts from resource management, including roads and stream crossing. We have up to 15,000 places in the watershed where roads cross streams, and every one of those places is where a little bit of sediment can get in water and start affecting the systems downstream. So there's cumulative impacts to consider. Rather than looking at single resources alone, we're looking at things in an integrated fashion. So we responded to the challenges with 4 broad strategies and 18 directions. 59 different actions are considered. And these aren't prescriptions. These are basically a summary of the issues that were considered and the kind of strategies that were required to respond to those issues. And the big deal is actually building our capacity to respond, having the governance structures in place, and the funding, the understanding and awareness that can actually support those. So the regional district has committed to 3 years of core support for the watershed plan, and that's coordination, basically bringing people together, bringing resources together, being able to go and apply for further grants and things like that, and develop the collaboration. A second big part of that is the education and information, the awareness building of how this all works, and really working with a process that we can learn together and help do better decisions by our water. There's certainly water monitoring and water management questions, everything from measuring our use and being able to adapt to drought conditions, as well as reducing the impact of wastewater and other pollution on the river itself. That's certainly a concern to a lot of people. Thirdly, we're looking at the aquatic ecosystem function and how you support shoreline and riparian systems to actually function well and not be bleeding sediment into the river. And the fourth strategy is really enhancing the amenity and recreational values of the watershed that so many of us came here for. The float in the summertime is a destination event for a lot of people. So the key to success of the plan is the commitment of resources and capacity, expertise going forward. And that work will be kind of channeled through the steering committee and supported through an implementation team and a round table. And that kind of will be a great place for people to connect over the implementing watershed plan. It's interesting, for a while I thought about it as a foundation. Kind of, you build the foundation for the house and then you build the house. And then, another metaphor came to mind. It's a software, it's a tool that we pick up and use so that we can work together on this watershed plan. And in that way, software is adaptable. So you actually notice if you look at watershed plan, it says version 1.01. We'll have a version 1.2 by the end of this year. Sorry, 1.1, 1.2 next year. And then the next major revision in a few years' time would be version 2. So it's basically being able to adapt to the needs, new understandings, new monitoring results, and feedback from people. So it's truly a living document. So what we're requesting through endorsement is really the recognition of the interests that each party has in the conservation and stewardship of water, and the role of the watershed management plan in providing information, strategies, coordination, and the venue for collaborative efforts. So what we're requesting is that the council commits to considering the information in the plan in relevant decisions and relevant discussions, supporting the implementation of priority strategies and actions where the city is involved as appropriate and at council strategies. So this isn't something where we say, this is how much you're going to be paying for this. This is what are the initiatives that the city of Grand Forks really supports, wants to be involved in, and wants to lead. Really, another key is promoting a plan for use by other organizations, agencies, and residents, directing staff to provide advice, information, and data to the plan implementation team or working groups. So if we're looking at, what is the effect of water conservation strategies on actual water use, we'd love to be able to use the data and share that with other communities and help build a really good strategy to get it that way. And participating in the annual review and update of the plan as a member of the Kettle River Roundtable. So when we go through and pick this plan up and revise it every year, we need that full participation, and we'd love to have both technical staff as well as council members participate in that. So that's the nature of the endorsement that we're requesting. Something similar has been provided by the regional district in their November 27th board meeting, and we're going out and requesting the endorsement of the other municipal partners, Greenwood and Midway, over the coming weeks. After that, we'll be going to other provincial bodies and industrial partners that will be involved in rolling the plan out. So I know that there's a lot of information in the plan and there's a lot to digest, and I really look forward, this is kind of the next part of the conversation, what your interests are in watershed going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. That's a beautiful plan. I mean, it just looks gorgeous, and you've done a very professional job on it. Thank you for bringing it to us. I have a couple questions. One with regards, I'm sure you're familiar with the POLIS project at
Yes,
UVic, you attended UVic yourself. And with the new rollout from the provincial government for their sustainability, their new Water Act. With accepting this plan, I'm just wondering how much it's going to cost the city in the long term. The POLIS report that I looked up on the internet talks about a budget increase in the order of at least 10% to 20% over its 2014 base will be needed for the Ministry of Environment. And it states that these increases are to come from fees and licenses. I'm just wondering, with the new studies and the new organizations that will be formed, how much of a cost that will be to the city?
That's a good question. I think there's two parts there. One is the implementation of the Water Sustainability Act. It was passed last year and will go into force. Well, it's going into force this year. The new water prices, the resource rents will be coming into force next year. And up to this point, groundwater hasn't been regulated. For large suppliers, there's been certainly regulations involved, but for other water users, everything except domestic, individual household consumption will be actually priced different. And that's something that's come out of the Water Sustainability Act discussions. That is what is expected to help pay for the new regulatory role of, actually managing groundwater and managing the connection between groundwater and surface water. It's tremendously expensive to understand how these systems work, and they just don't have the data. The city of Grand Forks and the regional district here are very lucky to have a tremendous number of studies that have gone into the aquifer here, both on behalf of the city as well as a larger partnership during the 2000s. And so this aquifer is actually one of the better understood in the province. But I don't know if the province yet knows what it will cost to actually do water management the way that's undertaken in the Water Sustainability Act. One of the things that we've requested in our response to the Water Sustainability Act is that resources are provided to local communities to actually undertake this work of participating in that collaborative governance. They haven't also specified, they mentioned water sustainability plans, which essentially what our plan is, certainly to be a component of, because those regulations aren't out yet. And we would like to see provincial level support for participating in those. I think from a standpoint of cost for the city and for the RDKB, most of this work has been supported by the gas tax funds for coordination, and that will continue to have a role for infrastructure-related projects that might come out. But there's been a lot of staff and in-kind support from the RDKB, from the city, from the Village of Midway, City of Greenwood, et cetera. And so that in-kind cost is certainly considerable. I would expect a similar level of participation going forward.
Councillor Butler.
Thanks. And my other question was, in the watershed management plan, it recommends water storage areas.
Yes.
And I fully support this as well with regards to cisterns in communities, saving water from stormwater usage and reusing that. But I am concerned that these water storage areas might also give permission for larger water storage areas for dams along the Kettle and Granby River. And by recommending this, I'm concerned that we'll be recommending dams on those rivers.
Sure, I definitely understand the concern, and actually our stakeholder advisory group as a whole was also concerned about that. So the approach taken, and is detailed in the discussion paper 3, and then summarized in the watershed plan, is that there is a role for storage, but that the costs and benefits really need to be tremendously cautious about the larger storage. So starting with the natural storage that is involved, available in soil, in mulch, in water retention on the surface, natural storage in wetlands and things like that, rather than draining them, maybe those can be restored. And then moving out to smaller distributed off-channel or tributary storage where you're not having an impact on fish habitat and not creating the large reservoirs. I think there is this tremendous concern about the larger reservoirs that might be considered under the plan. We look west to the Similkameen and St. Fortis's idea of putting a large reservoir and hydro project there, and I think that everyone in the community would be very cautious about that. What the plan supports is consideration of them and due process in considering them. We may have very serious water storage needs in the future. The projections that we did as part of the plan last year was to look at future climate conditions, future water use, and the effect of those two things on how much water is in the river. And so if we grow at all and agricultural use grows at all, which it seems to be doing now, there's water licenses that are being used that haven't been used for decades now. And we have some severe droughts in the 2050s, for instance, we could see the river run dry for periods of weeks. And if it's there in terms of the actual water use. Right now, we're using in late summer as much water as is flowing in the river, sometimes more. And under a severe drought, there could be some real constraints there. So storage may be a solution to help augment flows. It might only be something as large as, say, a super tanker, size of dam, not something the size of Williston Lake.
Councillor Overshaken.
I got this figured out. I just want to thank you, Mr. Watt, for all the hard work and your leadership on this, as well as every other individual who has stepped forward and volunteered their time and worked so hard to make this plan come into existence here. With that being said, I fully support it, and I would like to recommend that Council for the request from Graham Watt of Kettle River Watershed Management Plan Steering Committee's requesting Council's endorsement of the Kettle River Watershed Management Plan to the February 10th regular meeting for discussion and decision.
All in favor?
Discussion.
Yes.
So you turn yours off.
Yes, all right.
I was just wondering, Mr. Mayor, if we had any questions from the public before we proceed.
Yeah, my question is, do you have stakeholders?
Could you stand up and
Could you
identify
identify
yourself?
yourself?
My name is Donald Ferran, Grand Forks Watershed Coalition. My question to you, you have stakeholders, members of the Sinaiaks and the Okanagan Nation. Did those people, did the Okanagan Nation and did the Sinaiaks people endorse the watershed management plan?
No, we haven't had endorsement yet.
All right, that's my question.
Any other questions?
I'd just like to ask one quick question. My name is Barry Brando. Water management in our province is pretty grim. You see this in a number of places, Kettle River, Ragged Bridge, Eagle Creek, close to Greenland. So the question really is, what engagement do you have with the provincial government? Because the provincial government, we don't have the MLA. She's decided that the vibes aren't good in the boundary, so she doesn't come here. We've seen no evidence from the BC Liberal government that they have interest in managing anything on a sustainable, scientific driven way on the mountain. So if we don't have any involvement with the BC Liberal government, we got the mother of all rivers to cross to get this small river managed.
Could I respond?
Please.
So I understand where your concerns are coming from, and I think that in the world of watershed management, there's many different players within government, and there's also the leadership of the government as a whole. So there's a lot of different parts there. We'll leave aside the political questions. I think that certain areas, there's a lot of real sore spots. I think open source, in fact, we see on the landscape, and we're really concerned about those. But I have seen a really strong level of support from senior staff within government who actually see this as a priority, see the groundwater monitoring as a priority, who see who are willing to actually step up the level of water quality monitoring in the aquifers as a result of the watershed plan. There's others that I've talked to who are in support of developing water quality objectives for the river, and as well as updating the ones for the lake, which haven't been done since the 90s. I think there is a big undertaking that they're doing with the Water Sustainability Act right now, and I don't think they have the resources allocated yet to actually do it properly. And as you are aware, there's conflicting demands on water, conflicting demands on resources. And so we actually, I think as a community, have to continue advocating for the stewardship as well as taking the leadership role in it where we can. And that might mean new roles and responsibilities, unfortunately. So I think that conversation will continue with over the coming 3 years. We don't know what the local role in water management will be under the new Water Sustainability Act ultimately. But I think by having a strong presence with this watershed plan, it can actually provide good leadership there.
I do support the plan.
Do you have any other questions?
Hi, I'm Donna Seminoff. I have read in your material, there is a question about high water use and whether it was affecting the river. And I also read in your material that our river fluctuates normally and is mainly affected by precipitation. And I know since year 2000, we had a couple of years that were drier. We noticed at the end of the summer. And there was also a question mark of whether high water use was affecting the river. There's also question marks whether logging higher up is affecting how the water comes down. Like in the spring, we had flooding in Johnson Flats for that, in the past. And studying what's happening there, I was also curious about whether with water coming down quickly in the spring, say if trees aren't slowing down, how it comes down. If it comes down early, maybe that's explaining why we have less water late summer. Looking at Grand Forks statistics, we see our big use of water in 2006 was about 1.5 million cubic meters more coming from our wells than we use now. And also in 2013, when we were using most of our water, it was actually when the water was high in the beginning of July. So in here it says that there's a problem with high water use, and I'm seeing us use a lot less water than we used to here. So I was curious why you have that written in here.
Sure, there's a lot of questions in there. Well, if I may respond to it. Let's start at the top of the watershed. The effective forestry of fires, of mountain pine beetle, of anything that takes tree cover and reduces it for a period of time is complex. It partly depends on the slope and aspect and different things like that and how it flows off the landscape. But generally what happens is that you have an increase in that spring melt, especially south-facing or flat slopes, and you get a slightly spikier response in the spring flood. It rises more quickly and may drop off more quickly. But you also see higher water tables and actually more small wetlands appearing up in the highlands when there's more logging because there isn't that evapotranspiration from the trees. And so the question of how much water is coming out over a longer period is really tricky to do at a large watershed scale. There have been some studies on some of the small watersheds about how the hydrology and sediment loads are affected. But overall, I think those questions they're important, but equally important is looking at the sum total of water use, not only from the city of Grand Forks and residents in the city, but also the other water users in the aquifer, on the river, down the entire system. So as a whole, water use for irrigation and keeping greens green and things like that increases the longer that your summers are and the warmer that they are. So if you have long dry periods, as in 2003 and 2009, the amount of water being used and actually measured being used, as well as estimated through models, was shown to actually affect the amount of water flowing in the river, because that's the return flow from those aquifers that are being tapped. It's the water table can actually be lower than key places. And so it may be that, the big peaks and the big lows are really determined by weather. During those lows, our use matters tremendously. That's the equation. We're not going to affect water that much in a year where we have lots of snow melt, lots of rain, and a moist kind of cool summer. But in a really dry year, that's when it adds up.
In terms of really Grand Forks Estate, flooding is an issue, right? It can affect our residences, and wanting to get a clear understanding of why that is happening in our river. Also, if you're fixing up the areas along the river and then you have a flood, it destroys all your work. So it's really important to
Flood resilience is
figure that out. Following up on the question regarding finances, I was reading, I think it was from Polis, a recommendation to include in the price of water that's charged, say, it sounds like 2 municipalities, to include the cost for projects like this. So that would raise the price of water volume.
Yeah.
And you mentioned gas tax funds. Does that mean you would ask that the city would apply for their gas tax funds from the government to use their funds towards the project?
We haven't discussed that yet. If it's something that the city wanted to support in a project that is undertaking related to water or related floodplain issues, I think that may be an appropriate source of funds. There are certainly others. Yeah.
If they're making this commitment, do they have a choice regarding the funding, because they have to think of all their things? Yeah?
That's why it says as appropriate and in close discussion.
Thank you, Ray.
Certainly.
Donald Ferrand again. Just a comment to council. I would personally support the plan if the Okanagan Nation and the Sinites people were here to endorse it. And in light of the June decision by the Supreme Court of Canada on the Silcotin case, that basically made a determination that the resource belongs to the First Nation, and that if our society, our white society, is using the resource, there needs to be some accommodation there. And I feel that if City Council approves, endorses the plan, it's taking a prejudicial position towards the First Nations that basically are trying to negotiate treaties on this land. And I know in the past that I talked to Rolly Russell about having, did he get the cooperation of the Okanagan, for instance? And it was like, oh, we sent them a letter, they never responded. But I can tell you that in 1994, the Granby Park was created thanks to the support of Grand Chief Stuart Phillip, who at that time was the Grand Chief for the Penticton tribe and the Okanagan Nation. And it is very important that if you support this, that if you pass a motion of endorsement for the plan, that you have a caveat that your endorsement will only be valid if the Okanagan Nation and the Sinites people also endorse the plan. Because right now, there is major preparation work by all the tribes of the Columbia on both the American and the Canadian side. And we are part of the Columbia River. And it would be prejudicial, again, to take positions on part of that watershed when First Nations are basically strategizing right now to get their best solution if there is to be a new treaty on the Columbia River, or if the treaty is simply going to be abandoned. That question is not resolved yet. And again, we're always talking of vision, and along that line, First Nations are talking of finally getting a fish ladder at Grand Coulee Dam, or Grand Coulee Dam being taken out, but it's more talk of the fish ladder. I can tell you that if a fish ladder goes into Grand Coulee Dam, Cascade Fall becomes one of the prime fishing sites on the Upper Columbia. We could be talking of a fish ladder at Cascade Dam and having salmon coming all the way up all our creeks and ditches. But again, it's a question of endorsing this plan only under condition that the First Nations that are trying to negotiate with the provincial government, who basically right now is cutting us off from economic development by stonewalling the negotiations on the South Okanagan part, and basically stonewalling some of the local nations on treaty negotiations. So we just don't want to put one in the back of the First Nations again. Important that endorse only with endorsement of the First Nations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Butler.
I just had one more question quickly for you. What I think our biggest threat might be to our watershed, and I don't know if it was directly addressed in your plan, was the commodification and privatization of water. We see large amounts of water being removed by corporation, large amounts of water being used for fracking, and we haven't dealt with that in our area, but I would hope that there would be provisions in the plan to protect us from those two type of things.
It's a big concern. I know I currently bulk water export, for instance, is illegal, but there are some real concerns that being in major trade agreements might undermine provincial laws for those kind of protections. I think the bulk export of water from the Kettle River wasn't considered as a major threat during the process. Logistics is a big part of it, and where the water is going and that kind of thing. Right now, we're essentially a footnote in the Columbia River negotiations, because we don't have dams on the river. The water is flowing essentially unregulated aside from use. I could certainly see that as something that could be, from the suggestion, addressed as a question or version point blank, and look to see if there are any safeguards that communities can place to ensure that that kind of extraction isn't a threat in the future. Follow up on that.
Councilor Thompson.
Oh, thank you, Graham. In your comments, you indicated that there have been times where the aquifer has been reduced due to weather and overuse. So the city's efforts to encourage water conservation by whatever means should also be pursued as well?
Yeah, there's one of the actions in is for all water suppliers, including municipalities, to undertake and implement water conservation strategies, and that's really up to the decision of each council, each board, of how those will roll out. I think working at them together as a group would certainly be helpful, especially for the education components. The aquifer itself, I should note, there has been no trend in the aquifer itself. It goes up and down. There's minor variations over time in terms of the monitoring well across the river in the industrial area here. But it's that relationship of the aquifer to the river, how much water is returning from the aquifer to the river. That's what we can measure in terms of response to use. I think a strong recommendation in the plan itself is the continued effort, and the City of Grand Forks has recognized in its water conservation strategy, continued effort at implementing water conservation strategies. There's a lot of latitude in how those are carried out. I think that it's important to, I guess, remember to be integrated. And so one tool by itself, whether it's pricing, whether it's education, whether it's metering, whether it's another tool, often when someone implements it by itself without a concerted effort to also look at attitudes, behavior, capacity, the actual motivation to change, maybe people would look at a $20 increase in their bill to have a green lawn is not a huge barrier. So what are the barriers and the benefits of water conservation, and how does each water supplier help understand those and carry them out forward? That would be my recommendation, is really go forward with a suite of strategies that are integrated.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or discussions?
Just one last quick question. Barry Brando again. Graham, would you consider sitting down with the agricultural sector in this valley, in part involving maybe the ranchers one time, other users? Obviously, there's a lot of politics in the background. A lot of people in this room aren't aware about the grim approach our province has taken to resource management. But would you consider it?
Yes, actually, we've had a number of conversations with water suppliers and are looking for ways of
No, but I
helping
mean,
each other.
involving the public, let's say we
Involving the public.
involve the, talk to the ranchers, say, look, we got some issues. Will you voluntarily endorse this to see the merit of starting to manage our water resource? But I think most of you should be aware that in 2005, the BC Liberal government hired the executive director of the BC Cattlemen's Association to oversee the provincial range bureaucracy. So range management always grim is gone. And that's the biggest hurdle, their politics.
Thank you.
Sir.
Hi, Roy Russell. Just a couple of quick points to clarify. One is on the budget questions that were in terms of the costs incurred to the city. I want to highlight the box on the screen which identifies the 5 items that essentially are being requested of the council at this point. And there's no financial obligation engaged in those things. It's essentially to consider the plan and making decisions and act with the city therefore it sees fit. And just a quick point to the First Nation consultation. Yeah, we've been looking for years in terms of that, the back and forth, and we have actively engaged in our the stakeholder process around. And so they had not come back to us at any point and never said that they have any problems with the plan essentially. And so that consultation continues at this point. And so that's why it's been plenty more than a letter that we sent.
It's actually been numerous presentations and meetings and phone calls, and it's
with the First Nations.
Yes, with the First Nations directly.
With the Okanagan
Yes.
First Nations.
Yes.
And why have they not endorsed your plan?
It's a big
Because
process.
it's prejudicial to their interests.
Actually, this is a provincial. What the issues that are of concern are how the province proceeds with regulation and management of water, not per se how local governments provide stewardship, because this is about stewardship. So also in the plan itself are clear commitments for working with, for collaborating with, and having meaningful participation from First Nations. That's a very clear part of this. So endorsing the plan would actually support those actions. And we are talking about how to have a meeting of elders. I'm talking with my counterparts in the Okanagan Nation lines on how to have a meeting with elders so that we can have that engagement and participation. I think that your understanding of the situation as presented here paints it differently.
And why did you not bring the elders here to the meeting to support you?
We can address that some other time. You're leading us down a different path here.
Sir, you got a question?
My name is Murray Rennie. I have a question for you. You mentioned earlier about having the cities and municipalities and that possibly having to fund this to some extent. Has any approach been made to the provincial government to charge royalties on the money around the water that is being taken out of the Peace River for fracking? Has there been any approach to the provincial government to charge Nestle's for the amount of water they take out of the aquifer at home?
There are
To fund this instead of, they're making the money off off of the water that belongs to the people of the province of British Columbia, but they're not contributing a damn thing back to it.
You can follow up on that.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Just an answer to the gentleman's question. It was reported in the province this week about the Sustainability Act. Just checking it here. According to Chandra Herbert's research, and I believe she's the NDP environment critic, it says that the cost for one Olympic-sized swimming pool for an individual would be $178.57, while the cost for the same amount of water from a mining company would be just $5.21, and a water bottling company would be $6.25. So the critic is saying that the costs for these fracking companies and water bottling companies is much lower than the costs that are being put down on the individual. That's my understanding of the province's report here.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, this discussion revolves around the Kettle River Watershed Management Plan, not in regards to sales of water and fracking.
My suggestion was just to alleviate the people in the city there in the Grand Forks and Greenwood and Midway and that from having to pay for it, where there's commercial enterprises that are making millions of dollars and contributing nothing to them.
That's a very good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Do we have any other questions or discussions?
$6 is better than no dollars.
If not, then we will vote on the motion. Can you please repeat the motion?
It's to refer it to tonight's meeting.
All in favor? So carried.
Thank you.
I would now like to welcome James Kay and Jade Jordan on behalf of the WSP Development Showcase Initiative for an update and overview of the program since initiated in May 2014.
Good morning, Your Worship, Mayor Conrad, members of council, distinguished guests and citizens of Grand Forks. My name is James. I'm here today with Jay to talk to you quickly about the lands optimization and development showcase strategy. It's been our pleasure over the last 7 months to work with staff on this initiative. It was an opportunity to, this initiative was born of trying to take an asset, or series of assets that the city of Grand Forks owns, and try and leverage them to generate an economic development engine, to try and use them to generate jobs, to generate investment, and to generate development in the community of Grand Forks. Now, our objective here today is merely to provide a brief overview of where we've come, where we are at in the program, and more importantly, to present for you a slate of options with regard to where this program could go in the future, whether or not you choose to continue it, and if so, in what form. We started this program in May 2014, and let's be honest and put it on the table. Land development, particularly land development of municipal lands, is a contentious issue. Now, staff had prepared a strategy, and the whole intent of this program was that lands that were strategic for the community, lands that were intended for future key uses in the community were protected. Those aren't the lands we're talking about in this showcase. The lands we were talking about were lands that were identified as surplus to the community, lands that weren't needed for other municipal uses. And the process, the way we set it up, as council's familiar with, are the council retains all decision-making authority. So the invitation was to key stakeholders, to investors, to developers, to come to the city and propose and promote their ideas on the ways they could invest, ways they could help the council, always gets to make the final decision. The intent here and what we've been able to generate is through the community showcase, engaging the citizens, engaging the development community in the area, combined with the economic development profile that you were doing, combined with the showcasing you've been doing with your videos and things, we were able to promote the city of Grand Forks. We were able to get out and generate some buzz. We were able to show people where Grand Forks was and why they would want to move and live here and invest here. The whole point, again, was to look at revenue generation and job creation. We know that you are trying to do more with less resources and to try and utilize the resources you have, particularly the land that you hold. The city of Grand Forks is in the very enviable position of owning a significant amount of land within its community. And the opportunity to use that capital to generate jobs, to ultimately improve lands and generate higher taxes, help ease the financial burden. Through the showcase, through the program that's been implemented, we understand from staff that there have been 14 inquiries with regard to development in the city of Grand Forks since September. We understand that there have been 14 inquiries on city-owned land. And while this is part of a much bigger initiative the city has undertaken, this showcase and this strategy is certainly a portion of it. We have heard some quantifications. Our consulting services to date, the work that we've provided to the city of Grand Forks since May, totaled $10,000. And we've been told by staff that the potential, some of the applications that come forward have enormous financial impact on the community and enormous benefit. So we're suggesting that today the showcase has generated a fairly strong return on investment. I want to come back to the real estate strategy that was put in place by the city of Grand Forks. This showcase was certainly consistent with that, a very open process, important for the city not be involved in speculation or development in itself, but merely trying to incent and create investment through others. Of the properties that were identified, this is the magnitude of the opportunity that was put before us. $6.2 million worth of land and potential to generate $100,000 a year in taxes. And so that was really the incentive and the impetus to undertake this in the first place. So what have we been able to do? What was the strategy to date? Well, we undertook the showcase here in the community. We introduced the lands and introduced the opportunity to the citizens first. We then went forth to advisory committees and development institutes, to other stakeholder groups who were able to stand up and promote the city of Grand Forks and these opportunities. We went with staff to promote and for foreign investors and try and incent development to come to the city of Grand Forks. Just a couple of the quick slides, the ways that we showcased the properties. We identified them, we identified their assessed value, we identified the size, and you can see the range of residential, commercial, industrial properties. All we were doing was inviting proposals from the development community to come and invest in the community of Grand Forks. When we set out, what we're hoping to achieve? Well, we're 6 months into the program. We were trying to engage the community, we were trying to promote the community. We feel we've been successful in that. We were hopeful to dispose of 50 low-value surplus properties. These are little slivers of land. They're adjacent to neighboring properties. These are properties that under $10,000 the city may not need to hold, but could generate taxes from. We're hoping to create 3 significant sales, and we were looking to make sure that there's an ongoing inventory marketing of these properties.
So moving forward into 2015 and 2016, we have outlined several objectives to leverage and optimize the initiatives that are currently in place. With the success from reaching out to developers in Vancouver and Kelowna, we plan to target developing communities in Calgary and Edmonton. This could be by joining their UDI and Canadian Home Builders Association committees. There must also be a simplified concrete procedure in place so that when interest is expressed, all the protocols are laid out for the parties involved and a smooth transaction can be made. This will be included in the published how-to guide as well as previous success stories. By working together, our networks become yours, and we will ensure this package is sent out to all players. In order to achieve all of our objectives, we have created the following timeline. We want to complete the brochure and procedure guide by the end of February, update the stakeholders that previously expressed interest on the results from 2014 and the plan moving forward by web and newspaper in March. Direct marketing will include traveling to, meeting with, and providing all key players a copy of the procedure guide by April or May. The sale will give interested investors and landowners with adjacent or neighboring properties the option to purchase listed lands. And finally, we will update the council in August. The program that we prepared has a budget of $50,000, but it is completely scalable based on Grand Forks' needs, wants, and resources. We will customize the package to provide the city with the results that you desire. So why now? Why continue? Grand Forks has decided that it's open for business. The market is continuing on an upward trend, and there are still many different types of land available at affordable prices. The demand is high, with an increase of home sales up to 40%. Therefore, it is important to continue with the structured plan to truly benefit from previous efforts and position Grand Forks optimally in the future.
With that, thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions you may have.
Discussion. Councillor Thompson.
I just want to say I'm impressed with the work that you've done, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Any other questions from council or the gallery? Councilor Wishnowsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Out of curiosity, how do we move forward? The recommendation here is to receive this, but in regards to a $50,000 or the scalability issue, is that going to come back as a staff recommendation through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff?
Mr. Mayor, in the financial plan that council is considering, there is a $50,000 contingency in the budget for this program.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, once we complete our strategic planning session, if we'll be able to address this issue further when we have more information on how this council plans on proceeding. At this point, I don't think as a council we haven't done our strategic plan yet, so this will have to be factored in when we do that, I imagine.
Through your worship, if I may, absolutely. The intent was to provide a primer and opportunity to see where things may go through your strategic planning. Directed to staff may be whether this is a priority for council or not, and if so, at what level. And from there, we'd certainly be able to provide you a detailed work plan, accountability in the budget, and be able to provide a concrete work plan.
Yeah.
So do we have any other questions or discussions? Otherwise, may I have a motion to receive for information? All in favor? So carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll now have a presentation from staff, our Chief Financial Officer, Roxanne Shepherd, in regards to policy number 802, contracting authority and purchasing policy revision.
Thank you, Mayor Conrad, members of council. There's a revision of policy 802, contracting authority and purchasing. January 2013 is when this policy was first brought in as it looks now. We've had 2 years to work with it, and we found some areas that need a little bit of housekeeping. The first section, the first part that we adjusted was section E, spending authority. We'd like to increase the spending authority for the deputy fire chief, the deputy corporate officer, and the public works foreman. These positions are currently included under all employees and have a spending authority of $100. And the revision would give $10,000 spending authority and would be more in line with the current job duties. I've also added, at the beginning of the policy, under the policy objectives, I've added an ethical purchasing section. And it just adds requirements for declaration of interest, confidentiality of information, fair competition, and business gifts and hospitality. Section 5, verbal quotes. We had any purchases between 5 and 10,000 are currently requiring 3 verbal quotes written down by the managers. And there are a lot of cases, it doesn't take into account cases where we aren't able to obtain 3 quotes. So we've added a section in that deals with that happening when 3 quotes are not available or not practicable. Basically, it would have to get signed off by the chief financial officer. There has to be an attempt at 3 quotes or a reasonable explanation. And that explanation could be that it's a very specialized service. We have a case where we're getting some educational pricing on some of our software and just not able to obtain quotes of similar value. And then then a couple of other small housekeeping items, formal public tendering and request for proposals. Talks about facsimiles and how the city will accept facsimiles. However, those kind of qualifications are usually in the tendering documents themselves or the request for proposals. And we don't want to conflict with those as they go on an individual basis. So we're just removing that little piece from it. And under section 7, a small change to the tender opening practices. It says council is invited to be in attendance, and that hasn't been the practice currently. So we just remove that so that we're not breaking policy. Are there any questions?
Hey, I'm just curious, with council not being invited to attend the opening of RFPs or tenders, does that mean that council will not be allowed to view those documents or just not be there at the opening?
I would imagine unless it's protected under some sort of freedom of information or proprietary rights, that council would be allowed to view those documents.
Councillor Thompson.
Well, I think your recommendations are very reasonable, and I would put forward a resolution that the committee of whole recommends that council adopt policy 802-A1, contracting authority and purchasing policy.
Councillor Hammond.
So under section 7 means that you used to be able to accept RFPs and tenders by fax, but now you won't.
No, we're just removing that section from the purchasing policy because that section on how we receive the bids is usually included in those documents themselves, and it usually says that they accepted by email or by mail or by fax, but we didn't want to be conflicting with those documents themselds.
Okay.
Can I have a second on that motion first, if there's no?
No.
Okay,
Discussion.
Somebody's on.
Oh,
No.
come on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as a clarification here, the motion that you read is off the document itself, the request for decision. The agenda item says that the recommendation is that the committee of the whole recommends that council adopt policy number 802-A1, contracting authority and purchasing policy revision at the February 23rd, 2015 meeting. This, the motion that Councilor Thompson made as per the recommendation on the actual sheet there makes it
Okay.
sound today, this is next meeting.
This, at the next regular meeting,
Okay.
not this evening, sorry, I didn't get in there.
I'll accept the friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? So carried.
Could we have cabinet recess?
We're going to the next one.
Okay, call motion.
We
Recess.
need to do something.
This one is the same question.
Thank you.
We now have a verbal report from the acting corporate officer. Diane.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief verbal report. I believe at the last meeting, Councilor Butler asked for some clarification with regard to some statements that were read out by Mr. May. And if it pleases council, I just have a very quick little short verbal report that speaks to a conversation that I had with him.
Can you speak just a tiny bit louder?
Okay. I have a very brief little statement that I had talked to Mr. May about, and I just wanted to know if it would please council for me to get that verbal report. Right now, it's not very big. It was just a request. It wasn't a resolution. I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. May about a week or so ago, and the acting corporate officer and the building inspector were also present. Just with chatting with him, he's very fluent in his knowledge of the BC building and plumbing code, and he is very professional and tactful, and he is really clear with his abidance to this code. However, he did relate that he is aware, of course, the city's authority having jurisdiction with the building inspectors and city officers' authority to approve alternative solutions regarding installation of water meters. Mr. May, of course, will not put anything in writing out of the realm of building and plumbing code, as it is not his job, and he has no duty.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, please. I believe that we've been instructed not to speak on water meters at council.
Mr. Mayor, that's why I asked if council was going to entertain me to speak on this.
I believe that the public's had it, and they've been saying we've been spending too much time on this issue and that we don't need to.
Councillor Thompson.
With respect, I believe the resolution was that council was not to discuss the issue, and I would very much like to hear what the CAO has to say with respect to her discussions with Mr. May.
And if I may as well, point of order, Mr. Mayor, that motion itself is ultra vires. You're not superseding any constitutional abilities to freedom of speech.
Thank you. As I was saying, Mr. May will not put anything in writing outside of the realm of the building plumbing code, as it is not his job. He has no duty to comment, on our authority having jurisdiction. And it was just a very brief conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Sorry, just understand, Mr. Mayor, what Councillor Vershegen said. Did he say that the motion that we passed was inappropriate because it infringed on freedom of speech and therefore it's not valid?
It's ultra vires, yes.
It's what?
Ultra vires.
Ultra vires.
It's the legal term.
Okay.
Yes, it's the legal term.
Alright.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to receive this information?
Motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Bob Kettle, and just to speak to authority having jurisdiction, I was an inspector for the gas branch in Saskatchewan. And as an inspector, we were the authority having jurisdiction in our area. And I think that kind of implies to what the city's position is regarding that. And as an inspector, being the authority having jurisdiction, we were able to make discretionary decisions on things that happen in our area. The code is there as a guide. It isn't there as a definitive, you can't do anything but what's in the code. It's there as a guide. And I'm sure other contractors in this room and myself have all been in instances where we've done something and gone to the inspector and said, this isn't exactly by the letter of the code, but are you going to allow it? And the inspector, as an authority having jurisdiction, will say yes. And I'm just suggesting that the city absolutely is the authority having jurisdiction over what happens within the city limits. The code is there as a guide. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you for sharing the information. That's interesting. I'm curious, is the city bound to follow its own bylaw as to how, say, water meters are to be installed? Are they supposed to follow their own bylaws?
Councillor Boucher.
If I may, and it pains me to say this, yes, we are supposed to follow our own bylaws, but quite honestly, I'm not saying that we did in this situation. I'm just saying, generally speaking, there is no legislative requirement that a city has to follow its bylaws. Yes, in law, there is no requirement. Quite honestly, and no repercussions from the province if you didn't. Yeah. It makes for bad optics not to, but I'm just saying that that's the truth.
I don't know if the building code is like law, but a province can make amendments to or additions to a law, but they can't subtract from it. And I don't know whether a municipality can subtract from the building code. I know they can add conditions to it as long as it doesn't subtract from it if it applies the same as what it does to laws.
Any other discussions or questions?
Mr. Mayor, could you have the gentleman state his name for the records?
Murray Rennie.
Any other questions or discussions or debate? So,
We have a motion to receive, don't we?
we have a motion to receive, so all in favor? All opposed?
Really good motion.
Sure, you can record it.
So can you just call out the names of who, if you would like it recorded, who's opposed and who moved?
Can I have a show of hands again, who are in favor, please? Councillor Vershagen and Councillor Thompson. Councillor Ross, Councillor Hammond, and Councillor Krog were in favor. Those opposed, Councillor Butler.
And you would like that recorded?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
As our agenda now moves on to question period from the public.
No.
We have one more item.
Yeah, financial plan.
I got it after.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you do.
It's after my question then. And I was directed by staff that we will have question period from the gallery first. Section 11. Section 12 is the budget presentation.
All right, absolutely, yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Phil Morrow, Grand Forks. I just got one simple question. The other day, I was coming home from West Bank, going towards Kelowna, and on the side, they've got all these signs. And one of those is an electronic sign, and I quickly noticed that it was saying something to the effect, Experience Grand Forks. Now, I was wondering, was that authorized by the city? Is the city paying for it? How much is it costing us? Are we getting benefit for what we're paying for that sign? All the other times I've been through, I haven't seen it, so I was wondering, how long has it been there? Is it the city that's put this out? Thank you.
Can I direct this to staff, please?
I guess, Mr. Mayor, it was direction of council of the previous, and it was part of our economic development plan, and I believe that digital sign has been up since March of last year, like our advertising.
And the cost?
$10,000.
Are we getting $10,000 worth of value out of it? Or should we cancel it? Maybe
How can you
the council should think about it.
How would you be able to register that?
Spend $10,000 over the year, have people coming to Grand Forks and spending money because it's showing any increase.
Your worship, we would have no benefit whatsoever if we didn't have that sign there. I think that at this point in time, we would have to survey and perhaps James Wilson, our general manager from the Boundary Regional Chamber of Commerce, might be able to comment on any benefits that he's aware of as a result of that signage.
Councillor Hammond.
I think also we should look at it as part of the development showcase. I mean, we've had that
plan put together and it's been presented and we've seen the benefits so far. It's in 6 months, for 6 months, and we have the potential to realize a $350 million revenue, and that's all part of it. I mean, having that sign out there is encouraging people to come into Grand Forks and settle down in Grand Forks, buy property. We've had a 40% housing increase, so I mean, we can't determine whether it was because they saw that sign on the highway or it's all part and parcel of the same marketing for Grand Forks.
Chair has a question for staff. This sign, seen as it was voted in by previous council, what is the timelines on this? 6 months, a year?
Mr. Mayor, perhaps the acting corporate officer could speak to it. She was involved with that initiative.
Please.
It's for 1 year is the agreement with it's actually a radio station that.
Castrol.
Sorry?
Is it Castrol?
No, it's a country music station, KBS, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in Kelowna.
So the timelines are from May to May of this year?
March.
March.
For 12 months.
And then it will be readdressed by council or it drops off?
Potentially, it's something that's up for discussion when you start speaking about economic development and the strategy and sort of the road you're hoping to head down with economic development. So I would say that one of the biggest reasons we went with the digital sign in West Kelowna was to create an awareness that Grand Forks actually exists. We found, we went to a trade show twice. Once I went with the chamber, once James Wilson went with the chamber, and found out that there was a lack of general awareness that Grand Forks actually existed. And so what we were trying to do and what council was trying to do was highlight it and let people know that, yeah, we're here and we have great outdoor recreation. We changed the ad on that sign every few months. So in the winter, we try and highlight the winter activities, and in the summertime, we highlight the summer activities. Just to let people know that, yeah, we're here. It takes, I think we highlight the website, so we're getting a lot more hits on our website. James has recently started to help us document and record the hits to our website so that we can actually start measuring.
Yeah. Have some tangible.
So if I understand this correctly, we have a 1-year contractual agreement with them and there's no commitment to future without further approval.
That's right.
Any other further questions?
The only reason I asked is because I'm in West Bank quite regularly because I've got children there. And over the past year, this is the first time I've actually seen it. So, and I go back and forth quite regularly there. Thank you.
Would you like to respond to that?
It runs for 7 seconds, 30 times a minute. It runs quite frequently. So I think it depends on, there's all kinds of things that.
Well, you have to be there.
Well, I mean, if you're stuck in traffic, which many people are often, regularly, every day, you're gonna see it. And those are the people, it's not necessarily locals that we're trying to attract, it's the wider audience.
Councilor Shagan, did you have your hand up?
Oh, I was just going to echo exactly what I think it is.
Go ahead.
Would it work to possibly?
Can you identify yourself?
Thomas Semela. Would it work to, in our places of accommodation in Grand Forks, have a questionnaire for people who might have more time there to say how they became aware of Grand Forks or why they came? That might gauge a little bit about whether people are noticing some of the efforts that are being made to bring people here.
Maybe that's something to do. I believe that the Visitor Information Center does do that. They do that here in Grand Forks, and they also do that out at the lake. And I believe at the Welcome Center in Rock Creek, they also ask everybody who walks through the door, how did they find out about Grand Forks? Where do you come from, and what do you plan to do here?
Great.
Certainly.
Brian Taylor. Interesting that we're talking today about the disposal of surplus property. I think that council should keep in mind that the money that comes from the disposal of surplus goes into the building fund, the building reserve, and doesn't come out of that easily, but you could look at strategic properties the city might want to own. I think, Mr. Mayor, that there are some opportunities here to capitalize on our optimism for the city and realize that some strategic locations, not to be a land developer, but just because it would be good to control what happens in those sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the gallery? Sir?
My name's Rory Rennie, and I'm just wondering if you had any information with regards to the letter that I wrote to the mayor and council with regards to the slide fund.
Address that to staff.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure when Mr. Rennie put his letter in, it may be in our correspondence.
I dropped it
folder.
off last Monday,
Okay, so,
a week ago Monday.
it's gone. Yeah. It likely wouldn't have made this agenda because it likely went past the date, but it's likely in our correspondence folder, so, it's just in the works.
Okay. By next meeting?
It will be in the agenda.
So would staff be kind enough to address that, please? To address that for next meeting?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that'll be in the next agenda because it missed the deadline for the past one, so it'll be in the following agenda.
That's what I meant, yes.
That's
Thank
fine.
you. Councilor Butler?
I was just gonna say, you're free to ask us the question now, I'm curious.
The question was, how much money's in the slide fund? Second question was, what is the life expectancy of the slides that's left at the present rate of consumption? And the third question I asked was any of the money from the slide fund used to pay for the water meter contract?
I have a member of staff possibly answer that question, please.
Okay, we are actually going to address the slide fund and all the other reserve funds in the upcoming capital presentation right after this. But as of 2015, opening balance for the slide fund was $1,340,000. There has not been a penny of this used for any water meter project. Sorry, what was the third question?
The second question
Oh, the
was
life expectancy.
life expectancy, what's left?
I believe the lease agreement was signed for 25 years.
Mr. Mayor, I think it was like a 30-year agreement, and I think it's, we're likely not quite a third into it, so I think it's like the year 2036 is the life expectancy that we have with Pacific Abrasives, and from that agreement as well, at the end of that, the part of the agreement was the cleanup and the remediation of that piece of property that is city-owned. And so once the slag is done, or if the agreement is done after the 30 years, Pacific Abrasives is to clean that up.
Well, I'm satisfied with that.
Thank you.
Donna Summer, I have a question regarding flushing of pipes. So we usually have chlorine in our water. When our system is flushed, I understand there is a different chemical put through the pipes. I learned this at an open house, but can you tell the public what the name of the chemical that's used when the pipes are flushed?
Mr. Mayor, perhaps, I don't know if our manager of
Manager of operations might be able to answer that.
Are you talking flushing sanitary or the water?
Well, we get the pipes clean, flushed, and then we have sediment sometimes.
Yeah.
And so what would go through pipes that goes to the residents?
Yeah, we don't put anything in there when we're flushing it, just strictly open up the hydrant and flush it.
So when the generator and that open house there, that we were talking about flushing, it was with you, and you had mentioned there's a chemical used. But you didn't know the name.
Chlorate?
Yeah, and you didn't know the name of the chemical at that time?
Right, I can get back to you on that, but
Okay.
I know we don't put it in the system.
So it doesn't reach the residents? It's something that's just located there?
Right.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions? So ends the question period from the public. We will now move on to our budget presentation. May I invite Chief Financial Officer Roxanne Shepherd to present the 2015 to 2019 financial plan review and capital projects.
There are copies for handouts for members of the public if you'd like to see some larger spreadsheets that you can read.
Oh. Yeah, he wants to put his, you know,
Yeah.
see the approval, the disapproval, and whatever he puts the other side.
All right, welcome to the financial plan consultation, the second consultation of 3. The last meeting, we had our operating presentation. This meeting will mostly deal with our capital requests. And then the next meeting will be where we put it all together and make the decisions on how we're gonna fund certain projects and issues like that. It is gonna be difficult this time because we haven't done our strategic planning yet. So I think there are some issues that we may want to put on hold, or we may just decide to put them in and then address the budget again during your strategic planning if those priorities change. So the first thing I'd like to review is the carry forward projects that we have in progress right now. And that is, I believe, this 2014 carry forward capital projects. I believe it has blue on it. And it's a fold-out sheet of the main council, and there's a public, a legible version of that. So we do have our managers here. If you have any questions about any of these projects, I'll run through them quite briefly, but if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So the first thing to notice on this is the 2015 opening balances. These are draft, just like much of 2014 still is until our audit's complete on April 2nd. But to notice our 2015 opening balances, we have a library trust balance. I'm gonna change that number on you from 26,000 to 38,000. I was looking at the wrong account now, I'm sorry.
That's library trust?
Library trust actually has 38,000 in it, not 26,000.
38,697.
Well, about 38 even.
Okay.
There's a little bit extra in it. Okay. The gas tax general fund. This is at the end, or the beginning of 2015, 1.030392. That's considered actually deferred revenue in our, so I haven't been work closer to where the reserves are. So these are funding sources, these are different funding sources across the top, how we can fund these capital projects. Another one would be a grant, borrowing, and then we get into our reserves. So we have a parking reserve that has $4,000 and a bit in it. That's mostly to be used for establishment of parking spaces. We have an equipment reserve that we are putting approximately $200,000 a year in through our other funds by doing a payroll equipment charge, we call it, when a vehicle or a piece of equipment is used. We charge that department the blue book rate for what that amount is, and then that money goes into our equipment fund. We take out all of our repairs and maintenance, and the balance is going into the equipment reserve at year end. So as you can see, at 2015 opening balance was about 578,000. Didn't give myself a copy big enough to read.
You did get.
We have a capital fund that has 131,000 in it. A land reserve fund that we heard a member of the public speak about also. About $564,000 in there. That gets replenished through land sales and can be used for capital projects. We also have the slide reserve, $1,340,000 in there. Each year, approximately $235,000 is put into the slide reserve. And I've also included in council's package the bylaw for the slide reserve. And it can kind of show you the history of when the slide reserve was brought to life and how it's kind of changed over to today. It can be used, the site reserve can be used for capital projects. In the past, council has wanted to use it on heritage or legacy projects for the community. And I can provide a list of council if they so choose to see all of the funding or projects that have been funded out of this line since origination. So that leaves us at about 2.419 million. 619. I should just look at the bigger version of this so I can read it. I think the rest of the numbers are pretty good. Okay. So one of our first carry forward projects is the fire truck, the ladder truck. We had spent at year end 399,000 of a total possible 1.3 million. That council will be seeing a report from me shortly regarding how to fund the fire truck. Previous council had suggested we would do it over 5 years. We could do it either as a 5-year parcel tax, or we could do it as a general increase in taxes and do it as a separate line on the property taxes. So I'll be presenting shortly a report on that and council can make a decision on how to fund. We did purchase some American money about a year ago. We did know at a good rate. So when it was about 93, so we managed to purchase it at 91 cents. So yeah, we're not really feeling the diving right now, thank goodness. The spray park. Council's seen a presentation on this so far. We had budgeted for 300,000, 200,000 of it to come from the site reserve. To date, we had spent 23,149, and I'm thinking we're going to be reimbursed for that through a grant. Downtown beautification phase 2. This is a 2014 project. We had budgeted 300,000 for. We're just asking for a carry forward of the remaining amount of 24,000 to finish up the loose ends on the project. City Hall rebuild contingency. That was $300,000 we had requested in 2014 to cover any of the work order or change orders of the project that had not yet been approved. And I believe Sasha can speak to that if there are any questions on that. I know we've had almost all of our change orders have now been approved heading into the audit. And looks like we're only be using the 15,000 so far, plus the current request we have. And the maps. Oh, did I just ask you questions?
That 15,000, is that something that we approved previously, or was that?
That was the lights for upstairs.
Okay, that's,
yeah,
I just want to
yeah.
clarify
So yeah, we expect that, but I just put it in here because just so you know that that's still available. We would be coming to council requesting each time though to do the project contingency, so that council's aware of the progress on that project. Water meters, 705,000. This might vary slightly from Roger's report spent to date, only because of the charge issues on, we paid the bill in 2015, is it actually a 2014 charge? But as of year end 2014, the 2014 charges had totaled 705,000.
Yes, question.
Councilor Becker.
Surprise, surprise, eh? The gas tax carry forward was 1 million, and if you add the 705,000 that was previously spent, does that mean that at the beginning of 2014 we had 1,700,000 in the gas tax to begin with?
At the beginning of 2014?
Yeah.
There were a few different projects that came in and out of there, plus we're also putting in $210,000 a year into it.
Right, because, the public was told we had 1.3 million in there last year, so if we received our 200,000 allotment from the government, that would have only taken it up to 1.5 something, so I'm just wondering.
And then partially, the water meters, the 705 wasn't solely spent in 2014 either. Part of that was at the beginning or at the end of 2013 also. So there were other projects, but we could definitely give you an up-to-date gas tax reporting actually needs to be done for June, and it gives it up-to-date of everything that was in and out of there for each year. Water system locates, that is the prep for the water meter installation, and that was funded through gas tax. It was originally funded at 96,000 plus 25,000 for water meter communications, water conservation communications. So there's a bit of a balance left forward still on that project. West End Fire Protection Phase 2, Sasha's project. Manager of Development and Engineering, sorry. That is through the borrowing bylaw. We have year-to-date spent $288,000, and you will be seeing another presentation from Sasha on the next phase of that.
Councillor Butler.
Does that have to do with the new well? Or what is, yeah?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is the well number 2 installation.
Groundwater protection study. This is part of the West End Fire Protection. It was a study that would lead to some of these capital projects. It's still sitting on our books as a work in progress, so it's just, we needed to include it just to show that we still have some committed funds out of our land reserve. The next 4 projects are electrical projects that are still carrying forward from 2014. He's midstream. Some of these projects have 2 and 3 phases to them, so he's midstream on a couple of these projects. You'll also see a little bit of an electrical capital summary at the very beginning of the next meeting. We didn't want this meeting to carry on extremely long this time, so we decided to do that at the beginning of the next presentation if you're wondering about electrical on the 2015 requests. And our multi-utility. Multi-utility was the $4.2 million borrowing that the citizens of the airport authorized for multi-utility projects. Here's what we've spent to date on those projects, $868,000, and that includes GIS asset management software. Are there any questions? Okay, bless you.
What was done on 22nd Street?
So far, there's been a lot of planning done. So I should probably give you more details on that, but that's been the majority of these, getting the plans ready on. So now we have our 2015 capital budget.
Councillor Butler, please.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just looking at the bottom of the borrowing column, the 5.2 million, is that how much we have in loans right now in total for?
No, it is not. That is how much we're proposing. The multi-utility is how much we have left, like the 3.2 million is how much we would have left on that borrowing. We don't have plans for the entire 4.2 million yet, so we're only borrowing as we need it. So we're doing a temporary borrowing on these bylaws. So we would only have borrowed the 868 as of the year end 2014, but we have the potential to be borrowing these monies.
So you're asking for us to borrow 5.2 million this year?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry.
We have to wait to borrow up to that.
Just
The bylaws that were.
Just so you know how much of that bylaw is left, how much room in that bylaw is left. We're not asking for that this year.
Okay.
Just a question for you. If we've got, say for example, 22nd Street, that's gone into research so far for $44,000. I'm assuming that it's in-staff people that have done that research. So is that money transferred out of wages and allocated into this position, into this slot?
I don't believe there are any wages in this multi-utility. It's been
So those are
professional services.
Those are hard costs?
Yes.
Outside costs?
Yes, Sasha could probably speak to those more, but she's not in yesterday, so.
Yeah.
So here's our balances. If we were to use all of it, and I haven't done for the borrowing, of course, here's our balances along the bottom of what we would have left in our reserves heading into the 2015 capital requests. So about 2.1 million. As you can see from that, the 2 healthy reserves are definitely the slag and the equipment reserve. So heading into our 2015 requests, the first one we will present will be a generator for 525 Central Avenue. Open up that 5 minutes. I might skip ahead and we also do his request, a very brief request for the command vehicle. Just waiting for Daniel. They ask IT questions. Not working. Nope. Not working. Worse.
Very high.
Okay, so we'll get to the videos. Okay.
Are you buying it now?
Yeah. There we go.
There we go. Okay, fire department is proposing to replace their 1999 Dodge command vehicle. It's 16 years old. It is ready for a reduced roll because our command vehicle gets some pretty hard use all the time. It is due for a reduced roll. It would be reduced and would replace our 1978 one-ton that is really ready for retirement. And that would lengthen the life of our 99 Dodge if we keep using it as it is and just change it out. There's probably, because of repair costs and stuff that are starting to maintenance and repair costs and stuff, the life would be reduced by quite a bit. And then we would have to buy a replacement for the 78 as well. So that's my proposal, is that we replace the command vehicle. Command vehicle, our current one would replace the 78. Okay. Question?
So chewing gum and baling wire doesn't work anymore?
Well, it does, but there are our mechanic who's running out of gum.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to read this from afar here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It says this replacement is consistent with the asset management program?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I've got an apparatus replacement program
Yeah.
through the fire department that I have. We're actually about a year behind on this, but it's pretty close to our asset replacement on our fire vehicles.
And one other question, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor. What role, if any, does the regional district play in funding any of these vehicles?
Well, this vehicle will be funded strictly by the city. Our other command vehicle that Deputy Chief Mgnt uses is a regional district vehicle and will be funded by them next year, 100%.
Okay.
So 100%
100%
city this year, 100% regional district next year, and that's our planning moving forward.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I guess I do have one question. And this is going to be funded from?
Equipment reserve. And I was just gonna show you that you also have a fold-out spreadsheet with yellow on it, and it's got the 2015 capital requests on it. And if you follow the fire truck along, or the command vehicle along, it will show it being funded from the equipment reserve.
Thank you.
Equipment / fleet, AKA fleet. AKA fleet. Okay, so I think we're ready for our IT. We have our generator for 525 Central.
Next time.
Daniel, if you could come on over. There will be some IT questions.
All right.
Right. Want me to-
Well, basically what's happening is we built a server room that hosts all our IT main server gear in between the city and the school district. It's located at 525 Central Avenue. When it was built, we didn't install originally a battery. Well, we installed a battery backup, which lasted for about 30 to 45 minutes originally, which was good enough for most of the power outages. However, as we increased the amount of servers and equipment in that room over the last couple of years, the time that the UPS, the battery backup lasts, is about 20 minutes. So with the power outages being about hour and a half to 2 hours over the last couple of years, on average for each major power outage, we constantly had the server room go down. Now, at first, this wasn't a big impact, except for that we lost communications to the file servers. These days, though, we have also the phone systems. The water and sewer system relies on the fiber optics that are going through that room. The electrical system requires it to be up and running. We're running into an issue where there is continuously the communication services for a lot of the departments, including emergency services, and everything goes down while the power is off, until the power is restored. And this last year, we actually had it where for a day after the servers were that badly impacted that we had to repair pieces and equipment out of that room. The spam filter was completely dead. We had to wait for a new one to arrive for 2 days. So emails weren't flowing or weren't being filtered properly during that time. We managed to get some else up and running. Big issues happening there. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to put a power generator in there to keep the battery backup kicks in for the 20 minutes or to last until the generator kicks in fully and is fully operational. In that way, we would keep the room up and running even in 10-hour, 15-hour, 2-day outages, no problem, right? Cost for that is about $60,000 in total, which would be split in between the city and the school district 50-50, because we're partners in that room.
The question was, any options of solar power?
Oh, it wouldn't be enough.
Wouldn't be enough? to
No,
charge the
because
batteries?
we have air conditioning units and all sorts of stuff in that room. There's
Running off the batteries?
currently they're not. So this is also another part of the problem is once the power goes out, the air conditioners go out, and the room still is running for another 20 minutes, which actually overheats that room quite quickly from all the all the heat generated by the servers. So ideally, you'd want to have the generator also power the air conditioners as quickly as possible.
Councillor Thompson?
So Daniel, your request is strictly related to the city's operation? Or is the school district also facing and being requested to contribute toward these capital costs?
The school district put it onto their budget for the last couple of years. For this day to come, this would be a joint venture, like the entire server room was a joint venture already. So we would, they would put in an equal amount of dollars required or labor, whatever we can do to get this fixed once and for all.
So these dollars are the city's share of the upgrade?
Well, the total is 60,000 is roughly that we're looking at, and the city's share would be 30,000.
I see, thank you.
Councillor O'Shea?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To me, the kicker is the emergency services part that you mentioned there. Could you explain in a little more detail, like how exactly that could affect emergency services?
The phone system is in there too. As part of this room, the fiber communication between all the sites, which our voice over IP phone system runs on as well, all goes through that room. With this room going dark, we lose communication between all the sites and including phone lines. So from that aspect, the fire department has asked me, could you please fix this? And I had the water and sewer guys come to me, can you please get this fixed? And I had the finance team come to me when the phone lines went down the last time at City Hall. Can we get this up and running? So this is like a venture that comes together out of all sorts of departments as a requirement, and the same from the school district side. They're having the same problems with this room going down.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson?
So the purchase of this generator, how long would that give you the power to, like, would that give you 2 hours or?
It's either going to be a natural gas or a diesel generator. We haven't sorted that entirely out, but ultimately, as long as the tank gets filled up, no biggie, it'll last. Even if we have a major emergency in this town and we lose power from the outside world, we could still keep the room up and running, and emergency services and water and sewer and electrical all communicating within the city.
Thank you.
In the aspect of air conditioning as essential services, but that would only be deemed necessary during the summer months, obviously, right?
Oh, no, this room has to be cooled all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, this room gets really hot.
So there's no possibility of recirculating air in during the winter time when it's cold outside as a fresh air intake system? That would happen.
We also got to look at the humidity in that room. So this is actually, these aren't just air conditioners in there. These are
well, an air conditioner is a humidifier, right?
Yeah, it needs to keep it. It's an environmental unit, is what it's officially called, to keep it at the right level. Like the room itself is actually 99.9% airtight.
Yes.
So there's no air coming in or out, and it stays in there. It's also required for the fire suppression system within that room. And
so it's a unit that actually recirculates the air, proper humidity.
Yeah, it keeps it all at the right level, basically.
Councillor Hammond?
Just out of curiosity, if we had an emergency and we were up and running, are you connected in that room with RDKB for their emergency planning?
The RDKB currently is still running their own thing. However, there's plans in place to extend the fiber network into the RDKB building at some point. We've discussed this in-house, but it was like a phase 3 of this fiber optics network. The fiber lines run almost right past there.
Right.
It's just the requirement wasn't there yet. And when we actually laid out the plans, the EOC was City Hall and the fire hall at that point. Plans are there to do this. We are connected through that room as well to Selkirk College and to the provincial network to the government agent building is where the main connection is to the internet for the municipality or for the government agencies in this town. So there is a lot relies on that room.
Right.
There was other talks in place before from governments potentially relocating some of their essential services into our room, but one of the big drawbacks right now is that there's no generator.
And sorry. Another note on that, Daniel was saying the finance was asking him about it, is power outages. We have 20 minutes of telephones and then our telephones die on us. And it's really frustrating because we're the first place people want to call from the city when the power goes, once the power coming back on. And we have 20 minutes. So it's just quite important to have a backup system.
Councillor Crowe.
Completely off topic. What's black fiber
Dark fiber?
or dark fiber? Yeah.
Okay, dark fiber is non-lit fiber. So if you run a fiber strand of, let's say, 12 cables, usually we terminate 2 to start. So they always get terminated in pairs. So there's still 5 pairs left. Okay. And they're in theory dark until you put devices on the end.
Oh, so our fiber, the difference. But you talked about extending the fiber potentially to the
regional district office, yeah, and we would.
So what's our fiber compared to dark fiber?
Oh, well, the fiber is dark until you light it up.
Okay, so that's all it
we would
means.
run cable into there, but you would still have to put a device on the end, on one end and the other end to make it work. But
okay, that's okay.
I have a question. The acquisition of this generator is being shared in cost by the city and the school board?
School district 51, yes.
Okay. The question I have is, are all the maintenance and upkeep costs and the cost of the fuel also being shared?
Yeah, it would be like a lot of this, the bonus with the school district, they have an on-site electrician, for example. So there's other benefits we would get out of this, like if there's any maintenance that needs to be done on the electrical end, the school district usually provides that. We have, on the other hand, a mechanic on staff, right? So there's a lot of these things that can be worked out, and so far whatever we've done with that server room was always the shared cost was 50-50.
So should you use gas or the other diesel, would all those costs be incurred also, shared equally?
As far as I know, yes. We haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty of what we're doing. We've sized it out in terms of the sizing of the unit that we would need. If it's going to be diesel or natural gas is still to be determined. But that's basically where we're at. We're probably going to use a mobile unit, so it could be moved back to the maintenance shop for maintenance if it needs to be, right? Or even move to another location if ever necessary.
And the sizing is scoped for possible future
Yes, exactly.
expansion.
We had Alex Love look into this as well. So, thank you.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you. Okay, I was living in Eastern Ontario at the time when they had the ice storm in the 90s. I think you might remember the ice storm. And generators were really hot commodities. And generators ran entire dairy farms, milking 120 cows, 150 cows. But I don't remember a generator costing $60,000. So that's a question. So I'm wondering if this generator is particularly designed so there won't be power surges from the generator. Also, who cares about the noise factor? If you need a generator, then who cares? And also, what is the value of this equipment that we are going to be running off this generator?
Okay, first question. The The generator itself, actually, the equipment with the generator itself, I think is only about $20,000. There is some switching that has to be installed to automatically fail over the gear. That's another $5,000 or $6,000. And then I don't know the exact dollars in terms of the generator. It might have been $30,000. I think the hardware in total we're looking at is about $35,000 that we need, and then there is labor required and an electrician to come in, and we got to disconnect that room and rewire a lot of the actual panels into the generator or into an outside plug that then gets fed in, and a lot of this was going to be labor. And we might be able to even save a lot of that money in terms of the in-house electricians that the school district has and our own maintenance crew, but $60,000 is the overall budget for labor and equipment needed if we would contract it out, I guess is the right way to put it, right?
So just as a supplementary, so it would be the backup panel, so in the event of this power outage, you would switch everything over to the backup panel.
Correct. Yeah, like there's an automatic switch should be installed, so we don't have to run down there and flick the switch every time there's a power outage to turn on the generator, right? And plug in cables. So what you want to do is you want to have it automatically fail over. Okay, the main power source is not there. Okay, let's give it 2-3 minutes to see what happens. If the power still doesn't come on, then let's fail over to the generator.
And the generator will do an automatic start.
Correct. Yeah, so that's there's other gear involved. The generator itself isn't necessarily the most expensive piece of that. In terms of the second part, the amount of gear that's in there,
Priceless.
priceless to some. When I look at the city's gear in there, including our fiber switch, we're looking probably at $150,000 to $200,000 worth of gear that's in there. If you add the school district part into that they individually run out of there, you're looking at probably about $500,000 total.
Thank you.
So we're shaking.
Okay. In saying that, thank you, Mr. Mayor, it seems like they have a much bigger vested interest in making sure that this room stays a certain way and is operational in the percentage of our 150 to the 500,000. Should that share not then be maybe split in a different manner that more closely resembles what they've invested compared to what we invested? Because their loss would be far greater than 50% of what's in there. That makes any sense.
I think that the total amount is about 500. So if you take the city's 150 to 200, so yes, they have a larger scale of equipment that they have in there.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think our end is more the potential risk of emergency services and whatnot going down. And they are losing phone systems, okay, and they're losing their access to their files, okay, right? We're losing emergency services. We're losing water and sewer. We're losing. So in theory, they could actually be saying, we don't need that generator for just phones and our files or whatnot, right?
Sure.
In that aspect. And so before we used to share all the costs in that room for main equipment like this with 50/50.
Fair enough.
That's how I would probably put that.
Reason? Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
All right, so the next presentation will be the water and wastewater SCADA upgrade. Director of Operations and Daniel IP. I think we're just gonna keep running through. We have a great big lineup with the Manager of Operations, all his budget briefings. And then we can put up the Manager of Development and Engineering to do hers. And then I'll come and give a little summary.
So what Daniel's gonna talk about now is our actual computer system that's located at the Public Works yard in the Water and Sewer Department. This is the computer system that does all of our communication to keep pumps moving, the sewer moving. So we got some issues there with some programming. I'll let Daniel talk about it a bit.
All right, so the problem we're running into there is that both of the computers that are currently in place run Windows XP. XP has been retired by Microsoft last year. There's no security patches, no nothing in, which is good to move forward. The problem is those two computers are also connected to the internet. We have to, our guys remotely from home, or we have the laptop from the site. So the computers need to stay up and running, and currently with running Windows XP and being on the city network / also being on the internet, the risk is just a little bit on the high side to for any sort of hacking attempt or any sort of security patches that aren't being updated by Windows XP anymore for the system to be infiltrated and potentially impact the entire network. So we've done this about, I think it was 5 years ago, we've done an upgrade where we migrated from NT4, which was way out of date at that point, to XP, which was the only thing supported by the software at that point. So now they support Windows 7 and soon Windows 8. I would hope to put a system in place to replace those two computers with 2 new machines. The cost for the 2 machines is about $3,000, which isn't much. The engineering needs to go into it, to migrating the data from one machine to the other, and to purchase an upgrade of the software to be compatible with Windows 7 or 8. That's about $22,000. So you're looking at a $25,000 investment. There might be ways where we can save a little bit of money here and there, but this is in overall, that's the rough dollar amount that we're looking at. This is what it cost us the last time when we did it 5 years ago. And I'm hoping to put Windows 8 right away on it, because Windows 8 doesn't expire until 2025. Yeah, so we got this right. I think so. So that's the supposedly lifetime expectancy of Windows 8. So in that way, we would get 10 years out of the system before hopefully having to invest into a lot of engineering time again. The computers we install usually are redundant. They have backups, and there's also the potential to maybe down the line move the electrical SCADA system onto this system as well, to double up on services, to save some money across the board and reduce the amount of assets in the sense that we have in the company.
Councillor Hammond.
Is the $22,000 for the software, is that the cost of the upgrade, or is that the cost to purchase new software?
That is an upgraded software as well as engineering time. The engineers from Pika Engineering that have been doing a lot of the work for us for the water and sewer SCADA, they're out of Nelson. They would have to migrate the data from one sense database to the new software, make sure the communication between all the sites, there's about 20 different sites involved. What we're doing, again, we're leveraging the fiber optics network for this, but they also have a backup radio communication to some of these sites that are hard to reach with the fiber optics. So there's a lot of fine tuning that's required, and yeah, that's what the 22,000 is for.
Thank you.
Okay. So as the options there, upgrade could be funded from the capital or the land reserve, so that's what we can look at. Okay. Yes, sir. So I'll just jump into my quick ones here with the replacement plan. So what we've done is, I'm working with Roxanne with an 18-year vehicle replacement plan. So in 18 years, things should roll over nicely. So this is just the first lap of it, of going after the longest vehicles we have in the fleet and throwing it out there for funding this year. The John Deere mower, an 88 John Deere mower, it's 27 years old, as you can see. So we're just looking at replacing this one. So it's the roughness of it. Next one that we're going to is the international dump truck. That's one of our key pieces of equipment for plowing snow. When these were bought, they were mates. There's 2 1989 dump trucks, and they bought 2 at once at the time. We thought that would be a little bit too much to chew this year, so we're suggesting 1 this year. Again, a 26-year-old dump truck. It's to say that, to tell you it's going to be catastrophically fail, I couldn't say that, but we're putting a lot more maintenance into it. It's a big ticket item. I think it's a piece of equipment that's valuable and needs to be running. So that's one of the suggestions. fleet replacement cost is $170,000, so that includes the sander, the underbody, everything. We're actually looking at even putting a pre-wetting system in it to pre-wet the sand as it goes down. Next one is a trailer replacement. So right now what the guys do is to run small loads to certain job sites, especially in parks, they have to pick up a bigger piece of equipment for a couple yards. So this consideration is just a small dump trailer to haul small amounts of material around. It's a $25,000 trailer that would be utilized. Right now, going through the small vehicles, with a 95 Ford pickup that's in the fleet, we're suggesting that we, part of our plan is to replace that for another vehicle. Right now, as you can see, it doesn't have the picture there. It's a water. Right now, we use it as a watering truck. When you see the students going out there watering through the summer there. So those are the vehicles. That's what you're going to see on the vehicle replacement plan. That might come out of the equipment replacement reserve.
Mr. Ross.
Do we ever look at the heavy equipment auctions that they have out? Like there's some on the prairies and, you know, like there are some really good deals you can get there on.
That's a great option. We'd love to do that. On the logistics of it, we would just have to have that power to go there, put the bid in, and then.
But a lot of this is done online too. Like you can do a lot of work online, and even to send, you know, one or staff person up there to actually have a look at the equipment, but still, you can save yourself 50 grand on a big, huge truck, or even 20 grand. You still come out up front.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's an option we can look at.
Councillor Thompson.
I hear what you're saying, Councillor Ross. My only concern with that is you're buying somebody else's trouble, perhaps. I mean, like, why are they auctioning it off? That would be my concern.
There's a lot of reasons that people put up equipment at those auctions. And some, like oil patch auctions and stuff, the equipment is tired, right? But a lot of it goes through, some of it's brand new. Companies go into default, right? So for those that actually go through the auctions and do that, there is a lot of good bargains there. You just have to do your homework, as Councillor Ross suggested. And yeah, you can make some pretty good deals.
Councillor Butler.
I just had a question as well as to how we're disposing of our old equipment that we're getting rid of. I know last year we did an auction, and I'm just wondering if we could get more by selling it on the internet.
We have to go through an auction here and put it out to the public.
We do have to put it out to the public. We do have an asset disposal policy, not necessarily through auction. That would be at the discretion of the manager of operations, how he best feels to dispose of the assets, but it does definitely need to be a public.
Yeah, as you know, as a rule, when we do it through our down at the shop or the yard, we get really low costs back, right?
Yeah.
Revenues.
Councillor Crocker.
Yeah, not that I have an addiction to auction sites. Thank you. I just bought a used defibrillator. How cool is that? Never mind. The cost, like when you look at something like Ritchie Brothers and stuff, you take your vehicles to them, so then that eats up the cost. So unless you're looking at high rates of return, right? If your vehicles are worth like $100,000, then it may make sense. But I always like the offering it local, and by local I mean the whole boundary and everything, because it did its service, and it is an opportunity for a resident to actually, you know, get some value by purchasing that piece of equipment. So, you know, we're kind of giving back a little bit.
Councillor Butler.
I wasn't actually suggesting taking our equipment to auction. I know that we've done a silent or closed auction, whatever you call it, to the city, but just putting it on Craigslist or something to recoup some more.
Oh,
funds.
okay, I
Yeah.
Okay, we will look at that. Excuse me, the Danville beacon site. So that's obviously the beacon site that's over on that mountain over there. We have solar panel there. We rely on to keep all the lights charged for when there's a medevac coming at night, and the lights need to be turned on. So we have some issues there with those lights. It is our most unreliable one. They really don't like it when they try to turn lights on and that one doesn't come on. So what we're asking is for a little bit more energy efficient with solar panel with LED. Bring that up to snuff so we can be a little bit more confident that that's going to be always coming on. So that's a $15,000 changeover right there.
And sorry to interrupt, there's also 2016 amount of 30,000, so that would be a 2-year upgrade. Am I correct on that? I had made a note on that for 2015, 15,000, and 2016, 30,000. So I think you had 2 stages planned for that. Just so council's aware that it would be the 2-part project.
Thanks.
So,
That's the hand.
in here it says that currently the building and the trees in the US shade the solar panels for part of the day. So how is that going to be eliminated by changing the lights to an LED?
We're hoping that it won't need as much power to keep these things energized. We're really kind of strong there with the US on doing anything that's in blocking trees. So we're hoping that by charging the LEDs, it'll hold the charge longer.
Do we have a lease for
Yes.
the building?
We do.
So have we got a footprint of how much we actually lease?
Yeah, I'm sure.
So we're not, within that footprint, we're not allowed to control the foliage and trees?
Absolutely. I think it's actually the US side. It's outside of our footprint.
That's shading it.
I don't know. I can check on that for you.
When you're referring to charging the LEDs, you mean charging the batteries?
Yes, that's right.
Are the batteries being upgraded to
Yes,
a larger capacity?
right.
Councilor Crog?
Yeah, do we have a reciprocal agreement with the states and the medical system down there, like the ambulance system? Can they, or have they ever medevaced any of their citizens through these lights? We don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. Because that would give us leverage to cut down the trees.
Find that out for you.
Is the beacon on US soil or Canadian soil?
It is on us.
Councilor Hammond?
I'm sure you probably thought of this, but is there a way to raise the sensor, elevate the sensor higher so it comes above the tree line?
I'm sure there's always ways. I could look into that to see what the,
Roger, if I could assist you on this, I was part of the build when they did that project up on that mountain.
Yep.
The problem we have there is the US border, the fence, this building is only 20 feet away from the fence. It's right on the crest of the hill.
Yeah.
Moving away from there, we get down too low in the mountain.
Right.
And the US, obviously the trees are 70 and 80 feet high, so we're really limited on where the solar panels can go.
And you
And
probably
the
don't.
existing lighting system runs on 100,000 kilowatts power. So it just draws those batteries tremendously.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's really the site location that was difficult.
right.
And Marsh Shells used to own that property. We have exchanged that lease. It is owned by Brian and Sons now. So we have a lease with them for access to. But when we start taking heavy equipment up, we have to clear it with the US border. The landowner of the farm that's on the American side, which lives in California, we have to get all these clearances just to get our equipment up there, just to bring things in, or we have to fly it in. So it's a difficult site for us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Carry on. Thanks, Wade. James Donaldson bleachers. The big blue bleachers in the back there. So we kind of take a look at them. Over the years, we've always had issues. We've done a lot of upgrades to them, mostly cosmetic by changing out plywood and the odd stringer or something. But now the engineer's report has pretty well deemed those things unsafe, which obviously concerns us tremendously. It's just phenomenal how much it costs to replace bleachers with aluminum, as you can see. So we're at a situation here where I think, that GFI is a pretty big thing for us, and we're asking that we remove those bleachers and put up permanent aluminum ones. So as you can see, the pictures aren't the greatest, but there's a lot of rot, there's a lot of failure there. Any questions?
So is this a figure, is it based on purchasing bleachers or having them locally constructed? Purchasing them, so outside. What about having them locally constructed? Like, it doesn't seem to be, we have metal fabricators in our community and lots of wood. What about having them constructed locally?
I mean, that's an option. We need to get them engineered, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. It's an
I
option.
mean, you've got engineered drawings and AutoCAD and, I don't know, just rather than buying bleachers from.
I concur Councillor Ross's option. Would the city be interested to look into that? Get some quotes compared to the cost that we have from an outside supplier?
Yeah, we're early in the game now, so, there's a couple directions we can go.
Great. Councillor Hammond?
I was just wondering if we had an estimate on wooden replacement.
No, we haven't. Again, we could get some drawings done and then get some estimates going.
Is wood viable though, again, based on our past track record?
I mean, ideally, it'd be nice to go with the aluminum. I know in years past with the wood, they put a big tarp over it every winter to try and save it. But
in the long run?
In the long run.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Watershed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What's the lifespan of the aluminum bleachers?
I didn't get back to you on that one.
And
I'd like to say forever, but I don't know.
And in as much, and anybody who knows me knows exactly how much I'm a fan of baseball, all baseball. And these bleachers, for the most part, to be realistic about it, are primarily to the benefit of the GFI. That they're not packed when there's a little game on, or they're not packed when there's baby with baseball on. Has there been any discussions with them about possible fundraising towards these bleachers or somehow helping out to offset those costs? Because it truly benefits them. And yes, the GFI is an absolute great event for this community. It draws people and players and families and economic, dollars into people's pockets here. But it truly is one weekend a year, those bleachers. And if there's any way we could partner with them, or somehow they could apply for different grants through baseball or sporting events, somehow to be able to offset the cost a little bit, so it isn't just completely borne by the taxpayer. And not everybody like me likes baseball, so it could be something.
Has any option been put out there for steel and powder coat in a comparative price?
We just put some numbers together quickly for the aluminum.
Would there be a viable option to try that avenue? Again, obviously having them locally fabricated.
Yeah. I think just putting it out there just so you can think about it, and if it doesn't pass the first litmus test here and gets to the next round, then we can look at all this, right?
Any other questions? Councillor Watershed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of possibly looking locally for the construction or engineering or however of the bleachers, is there anything in our purchasing policy that precludes us from favoring local through you, Mr. Mayor, and staff?
No, there isn't. We do have the carbon footprint, obviously favors local in so much that traveling to and from somebody that's from out of town would obviously increase the carbon footprint. So, and we do have a carbon footprint clause in our purchasing policy.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay. What have I got next, sir? Library lighting, so they've requested some upgrades to their lighting in the library. This past year, we put the HVAC system in, which is noticeably gonna increase their efficiency there for heating and cooling. Now they've asked for some upgrades in the lighting, which is an old lighting. And what we're suggesting is change out the T12s and go to the energy efficient T8s. We would fund this from our library trust fund. It's a $20,000 hit.
Can I just interrupt just briefly on that too? I had described to council earlier about how money was going into most of the reserves for the library trust. I hadn't really explained. The library does pay us a lease amount or a maintenance amount each year for the library. And then we take off all the expenses of anything that we pay for over at the library property, and the balance of that goes into the library trust. So the library trust is sitting at about $38,000. That's mostly for capital projects for the library. We have looked at this project and one other project. Would be a $20,000, would still leave the library trust at about $18,000. I wouldn't like to see it go under about $10,000 or $15,000 to be safe, just in case we have a capital emergency over there. But this would leave the library, well, I should call it capital reserve, library trust. This would leave the library trust healthy enough to be able to handle any kind of emergency. So.
Thanks. Playground replacement. So there's a wooden structure known as the Tawbuck down here at City Park. It's been flagged by our MIA, or insurance company, that it doesn't meet CSA specs, playground safety specifications. So we have to do something with it. We have to remove it, not put anything in, or remove it and put something in. We offered a $10,000 grant to us, if I'm not mistaken.
A risk management grant. MIA did approve that at the end of 2012 to be used on the playground replacement.
Yeah, so we actually looked at it last year to try to find something for $10,000, and if you've ever researched some kid-friendly and expect.
I just gotta say, as a parent, it's crazy. I mean, I remember when Hutton replaced their playground, it was extremely expensive.
It is.
And honestly, as a parent, I really miss the old-fashioned, homemade, local playgrounds. I don't see why we have to spend $45,000 so that kids can climb on stuff. Is there no way in with insurance that you can do something like that locally? Gina's shaking her head.
It is allowed, but we're bound by the CSA spec, and they've got so many different little rules and laws when these things are built. That if it's not built CSA certified, then we're putting ourselves out there.
Councilor Thompson.
Through you to Roger, and maybe Roger can't answer, but Wayne could. Is that the structures that were built some years ago by the Rotary Club?
I'm not exactly sure.
It's a wood structure, right?
It's the wooden structure inside that concrete playground.
Yeah.
But I can't remember which group was the.
Because I know Rotary did put a bunch of things into the playground area.
The plaque there says Rotary.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been.
I have a question again, on this, is this a pre-made unit?
Yeah.
Can it possibly, again, be fabricated locally on site according to CSA issued plans?
Well, sure.
Well, we look into
It's
it.
possible, yeah, we can look into it.
Rather than jumping in with both feet at this price tag.
Yeah, I think, like, again, we'd have to come up with a design or a theme that we want to use to have there.
Well, I'm sure a company would be willing to supply plans and that if they know they have a chance, but you can't bid on something that's not pre-planned.
I'm getting the theme here about local.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to suggest a similar thing, and we talk about creative economic development opportunities here, and I think this is a really fun creative economic development opportunity. And there are a lot of models out there are really good, safe, approved. I think, you know, like I remember when my kids were babies, they were little, and they were playing on these things, and you know, they were paranoid about safety and removing gravel and replacing it with tire or wood chips, and it had to be 6 inches deep, and then all the local cats came and made it into their kindergarten. So there are some problems there, but I just think for creative, you know, I don't know, I think it's a really interesting creative local economic opportunity, instead of outsourcing. Yeah. We do have the resources here, and we have the intelligence. So I'm just, yeah, thanks. I'm just reiterating.
I love to hear that the council is thinking about how they can develop the economy locally here. But I just wanted to mention, I was part of a playground build in Vancouver. The Independent Order of Foresters, or they give back, they're an insurance company, but they arrange things and then volunteers come and build it. So things like that have been done and are being done. I'm not sure that we would qualify for the assistance, but it is something we could research, or your other ideas are great as well.
Thank you. Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Make it adult friendly.
Any other questions? Carry on.
Okay. Keep along here. Our fuel tanks down at the yard. These are our fuel tanks that are underground right now. What's happening is the pumping system there is obsolete. It went down several times this year, which the chief is very concerned about. So they don't even pump. So we tried to get parts through the company that supplied them years ago, and the parts aren't even available anymore. So we limped it in, but right now, I mean, we've done 4 times this year with them. Yeah. So diesel. That's right. So my request is to change out the pumps and the tanks. I'd like to get them out of the ground and go overhead with fuel tanks overhead, and then new pumps that would integrate into our system.
Are the tanks already showing being corroded?
I don't believe we've done a study on the tanks. Whenever I hear of underground tanks, I don't.
What's the significant cost differential with the tanks for it not to be changed to just the pumps?
Just the pumps?
Because pumps seem to be the issue.
Yeah.
Getting it up.
Yeah. Well, we can look at that option too, right?
Because if it's not broken, why fix it?
Your worship, if I could
Councilor
just
Thompson.
comment, we've had 2 instances, well, actually probably more, where underground tanks have caused leaks, and one was the at Chevron, the old Chevron station that closed down the well number 1. I would certainly support getting those tanks out of the ground and above ground for safety purposes, liability purposes. The cost to remediate that if there ever was a leak would just be atrocious. So I think I would support absolutely the above ground tanks and getting rid of the older ones until it got a problem.
Yeah, the beauty of the above ground is we've had a couple companies come to us and said we can just give you the whole package, right? We'll give you the above ground tanks with the pumps that just marry each other.
That's a problem.
Yeah, I used to work at an unnamed tank company, and their motto was Tanks Million. And I always thought it should be Tanks Million, everyone guaranteed a leaker. Because we're constantly going out, like even though we prepped them and we used coatings, underground coatings, and then we tarred them and everything, we would still get called back to dig some of them up to look for some of our leaks. So yeah, underground tanks are should be a thing of the past, basically, unless you're hurting for room. So if you want to go underground, you should be doing it with new tanks, but you should, in reality, be going above ground with it.
Yeah, I retract that, I agree. The environmental impact would be horrendous.
Well, that's all good discussion. Thank you.
Just an aside or a
Can I
question.
identify?
I'm sorry. Gloria Cook. Just a question on the side here. How safe are these above ground ones to allow, say, sabotage or attack of some sort or something leaks? What's the record on that?
Good question. They would be contained, so there's a concrete pad underneath it that contains anything that would spill. Having it visible like that is a little bit nicer to see. We've been in, it's a locked up compound and everything would be locked up.
So the security factor would be there.
Right.
Yeah. Councilor Ross.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what's the size of the tanks that we're looking at here? How many liter? And how many tanks?
Did I not put it on there?
I don't see it. Maybe I'm just, my eyes are blurry today, but
In the visual area, about the size of the one down in Danville?
I don't know how size. I mean,
Yeah,
Been
1,000,
there.
1,000
bigger
liters?
than that.
2,000 liters?
They're
10,
10 to
10, I was gonna say 10,000 is,
10,000 liter diesel.
yeah, for some reason.
So is it diesel and,
Diesel
I don't-
and regular gas.
so two tanks?
Correct.
Right, and are they, so they're sitting directly on the pad, obviously?
Right now?
No, they will be.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Above-
So there's no
above,
option of gravity flowing out of them, you have to pump out of them.
Right, it comes with a pump that would take it.
Yeah. Because the other option is having them raised up and having them on gravity flow.
Yes.
You know.
And we can, for some reason, yeah. But these ones were raised to a point.
And raised enough that you can gravity flow them. And the size of that tank, I'm not sure what,
So good question from Councilor Ross. So the tanks are above ground. Does the piping go back down into the ground and up to a pump, or do we pump right off? Okay, thank you. Because some of them do have the other method where it goes back to a pump.
Just for my own visual, I went to, it's at the school district where the bus garage is. They have above ground tanks. So I had a little look there, and so that sort of gave me an idea. They're pretty good.
yeah. If I may, if you do have a pump, often there's a safety on it, so you don't have overflow, right? Right, which is better than having gravity. Okay, I'm just thinking like, okay. I have a lot of experience with diesel tanks. And I've never had one leak.
Any other questions?
Okay. I think he just about got rid of me here. So Hedrick's grinder, so down at our wastewater treatment plant, definitely coming in. There's not always a liquid, get into everything. Lovely, but there's a lot of plastics, a lot of materials. So last year we had a grinder in for capital replacement, but once the numbers got looked at, it wasn't enough. So this year I'm bringing it back. This is actually grinds the materials down, but what I'm asking is for an auger that takes it out of the stream. So the existing one is just a grinder. It grinds it to a certain size, to a certain consistency, and then it still goes right through the plant. We had Urban Systems do a report who suggested we do the next step is not only grind it down, but take it out of the stream. So it augers it out and then puts it into a bag. And then we dispose of it after, obviously, when it's full. But really, the scary, it's $175,000 hit for that. It's operational-wise, it's the best thing we could do. But the grinder itself would be, I believe, about half of that grinder only. So something to think about there. I'm throwing the whole enchilada at you there.
Councilor Thompson.
So if I understand you correctly, the grinder, what you're proposing is going to is superior to what is currently happening, but the grinder regardless has to be replaced. Is that my understanding?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
The grinder is the one that's really scaring us. We're hearing some big time noises there.
What's been the lifespan of this grinder so far?
I think that grinder was put in with the original plan,
Yeah. So the 16 years old.
15, 16 years ago.
Okay, so now I'm just weighing the option because the cost of the grinder alone is half of what you're stating here.
Yes.
So in other words, we would get 30 years if you theoretically took 2 more grinders. 15, if we just took a grinder again, then you'd have another 15 and another 15 for a second grinder.
Yeah.
So it'd be good for 30 years.
Yes, if that price, yeah. If it was decided to go for grinder. We still have the issue of, the effluent getting through, the contaminants getting through.
Councilor Ross.
So we're talking about stuff that gets flushed down the toilet.
Correct.
Right, okay, so I have a macerator about the toilet in a building in my farm. And you have to be really careful what you put down that toilet. Can we have some kind of little education program in town that some things just shouldn't be flushed down the toilet?
That's
Like, it just doesn't make
part of
sense.
operation. We talked about it through our budget and that puts together. It's huge.
I mean, I don't even want hair to go down my macerator, and it's, yeah, it just seems to be like a little education program that people think, it's like throw it away and forget about it, or flush it and forget about it, but really, a little tiny education program is like, we're trying to pay for and be good stewards of our infrastructure, which is to benefit of all people, because we can spend more money on things that are, long-term benefit. Can we have a little education program for people to not throw plastic down the toilet?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We can do a lot of paper, but I think what works best is we go to the schools and we talk to the kids.
Oh, yeah. And there should be nice little signs, like, I even have septic, like, there's things that you should flush, and just, I think a little education program in the meantime to fix it, but stop throwing crap down the toilet.
Speaking of which, what's the city's policy on carburetors? Because I know a lot of municipalities allow it. The city of Kelowna, for one, does not, because it affects their sewage disposal plant because of so-called raw sewage going down, as compared where it can't be broken down as easily as waste, normal waste, which is theoretically already broken down. So what's the city's policy on
I'm not
carburetors?
sure about if there's anything in the policy. I don't know if we enforce
Is there a
anything that way.
bylaw?
The bylaw or?
Councilor Thompson?
When I was on council, first time, we were doing some renovations in our kitchen, and Victor Kumar was the city manager at that time. And we were wanting to put in a carburetor, and I phoned to inquire if there was going to be an issue if we did, and there wasn't any. So we have our carburetor, I use it daily. Don't take it away from me.
No. Yeah, the question is not, I have one myself too, but I know going to some municipalities do not allow them because of this problem. It's much tougher to break down the raw sewage. And again, people have used them. I don't believe in them personally, but they're one big garbage can where everybody throws everything in. So Ross, similar concept.
Yeah.
Councilor Ross.
I thought a carburetor was to put down food scrap. We have a green bin program. So you would put things in a green bin and it goes and makes compost instead of putting it in the carburetor. It just seems a bit, like, we have a green bin program. We don't need carburetors anymore.
I know.
Hi, Donna Seminoff. About an education program, it could be to schools, and if there was a program set up, it could be offered at the library and our churches and our senior citizen centers, since we don't have as many families as we used to, young families, to reach the elderly somehow, the older people.
Any other questions? Oh,
Gloria Cook again. This relates to this issue because of what you put down the sink. I read through your old plumbing code a while back, compared it to the new one that was come in. And I noticed something. We have had 2 experiences with supposedly flushable cat litter. We have had to deal with ourselves 2 incidences of plugging at a utility room sink and a toilet, where people flush down their flushable cat litter and clogged up the system. Now I see in your bylaw that it says you're not to put that stuff down your toilets and sinks. So I'm not so sure anyone knows this rule. And I'm wondering, and I meant to bring this up earlier, if there should be some notices given out to people or questions to the stores that sell this stuff if they still do sell it, because it's illegal to use it here, so why sell it? So I think that's something you should address as well, since we're talking about this. And it is a problem, it's a nasty one.
Thank you. Well noted. Councilor Crocker.
I'm also an expert on cat litter. Seriously, I have way too many rescue cats. The nice thing is the cat litter can go into the green bins.
Yes.
So I saw those products on the shelves, the flushable cat litter, and I thought, seriously, not a hope of trying to flush that stuff. Plus, people may wait till the very end, so it's not that if you flush that much, it'd probably be okay, but they're trying to flush a whole box, but that's why we have the green bin program. I just need a bigger bin.
And obviously, as the product suggests, if water hits it, it clumps. So, i.e., what's it going to do in your drains?
Spend an afternoon on what we found in your systems.
Please bring that to us. Any other questions? Carry on.
I believe that's for me, so I thank you for your time, and any more questions, just fire them at me. It's time for the budget.
Oh, you do.
I just wanted to thank you, Roger. I really appreciate how you listen to everyone's comments and write them down and take notes from members of the public. It's fun for everyone to be able to participate. So I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next project is the long-term strategic financial framework. The city commenced its asset management program in 2010, and we've actually been viewed as a leader in asset management. One of the projects that we wanted to complete this year was to come up with a framework that formulates principles and policies for spending financial. Because we need to develop and to provide stewardship over critical assets and resources. So what this program would do, or what this framework would do, would come up with some principles. It would include a couple of workshops with council and also a community engagement process, so that council consider the community's priorities. So some examples of some of the principles that we could come up with may include such things as the city would only fund 25% of the renewal projects identified. Or the city could create a dedicated reserve fund for asset renewal funded by a 1.9% tax increase. Or the city could target a maximum debt level of 15% of its sustainable revenues. So the cost of this project is $50,000, and the funding for this project would come from a gas tax grant, which we will be applying for. Any questions? Okay, the next project is the 5th Street water main replacement. During the project in 2011, we lost one of our water mains that crossed the Kettle River into the Ruckus area. The existing main was completely exposed and laying on the bed of the river. So, and then there's just another main that crosses the river as well. So we actually conducted some non-destructive testing to see what the pipe thickness of the remaining water main was. And in some locations, it's below 50% of its original thickness. So we were concerned that, this main is now very susceptible to failure with each year
that project goes by. So we had Urban Systems look at a bunch of different options for replacement of this main. And they basically came up with 2 viable options, and of course each comes with its own risk and cost. So these are the 2 options. One option is I'll just go back. It's this open cut method, so we'd install another water main across the river. The second option is to cross the Darrell Creek Bridge. So we would strap it to the edge of the bridge and take it across through the Ruckles area. And we would basically follow the pathway, the right pathway that we just installed along the integral property.
I'm confused about the cost. It seems to me that the pipe attached to the bridge would be a much simpler process.
It is.
Yet it's almost double the price.
So I'll just go back to this. So option 1, which is the open cut method, is the least cost. However, there's a lengthy approval period for that. It could take a year to 18 months. There's no guarantee that we would even receive approval for that. Basically, because we're going to be applying for a grant for this one, we chose the option 2 because it's 100% funded.
Yeah, I just don't understand why the cost to do something that seems so much more simpler and not as complex would be double than the equipment, the trenching and all of the
This
latest.
option 2 is a lot longer of a wait than option 1.
Oh, more pipe.
Yes. Yeah.
Councillor Thompson.
So Sasha, in your expert opinion, the preferred method would be option 2? Thank you.
And again, the funding for this project is proposed to come from the gas tax grant money, which is 100% funded.
Just a quick question, so the one with the bridge, is that has a longer life expectancy as well then?
Easier to maintain.
It'd be easier to maintain, yes, that's right. The open cut method, it really depends on the movement of the river and the riverbed changing, because those pipes were once buried. So the riverbed has changed that much where it's exposed them. So, you know, I can't really say if the life expectancy would be the same. Any other questions?
The exposed pipe, would it be insulated in any which way or protected with a membrane?
No, we had originally actually thought one pipe was encased in the other one.
Yeah.
But we found out that it's not.
The water drink, we're talking potable water.
Yes.
Gloria Cook again, why wouldn't it be protected in some way? But why wouldn't they recommend some kind of protection?
Because it's the bed of the river, there's no way of fixing that.
No, I'm talking about option 2.
The bridge.
Oh, sorry, what was your question?
Is it protected?
Oh, yes, it's within an insulated pipe.
So there's a membrane or
Yeah.
some sort, because the reservoir is also, so
Yeah,
that's why.
sorry, I thought you were referring to the one I was laying.
Oh, no, we're gone past that one already.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So,
Councillor Butler.
are these projects contingent on receiving the grant funding? So if you
Absolutely.
don't receive the grant funding, this won't be taken out of another account?
Unless council chooses to proceed.
Based on that question, what is the urgency on this side? Is the piping and
Well,
decaying?
every spring runoff that we go through with that pipe being exposed is a risk.
Has there been any signs of infiltration of any sort into the water?
Not that we've noticed, but we actually did the non-destructive testing in 2012, so that was a couple years ago. It's hard to say if anything's really changed.
So 2012?
Yeah.
So nothing's been done since? Is there plans to look at it?
Well, actually, I've had this project, I've brought this project forward every year since we lost our other one. And again, because it was contingent on grant funding, council never approved it.
Okay. But if the grant funding doesn't come and we don't proceed with it, will there be updated inspections on it?
We can do that.
Councilor Thompson?
So Sasha, am I correct then that because council didn't approve it and include it in the budget, no grant application was ever made?
No, council did approve the project in principle. There were no grants available at the time.
But it was included in the actual budget?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
Are there grants out there now available?
The gas tax strategic priorities fund, yeah, that's what we're applying for.
Councilor Ross?
Do we have a better chance of receiving gas tax funding if we put some seed money into it? If the city co-funds it? If we ask for 100%, does that put us back, lower our ability or put us down in the priority? It doesn't make a difference if we don't co-fund it, okay.
Okay, the next project is the East Side Reservoir Structure Study. The city has two reservoirs. We have the upper reservoir, which is a concrete structure, and then we have the East Zone Reservoir, which has a concrete bottom, and it's lined and covered with a geomembrane. So Interior Health conducted a couple inspections, one in 2013, one last year. And during their latest one, they actually noted some concerns regarding the cover. And one of them was that the membrane cover could be punctured, which would put the reservoir at risk for contamination. Two, that the existing membrane cover provides little insulation in the summer, which could decrease water quality. And the mixing in the reservoir needs to be improved to eliminate dead zones. So what they've asked us to do is put this project in our long-term planning. So they're not asking us to change it out right now, but they'd like us to put it in their plans. But before we can actually look at an actual project, we need to determine what the most optimal solution is, whether it's a whole new concrete structure, a roof truss system, or another new cover. That needs to be determined. So that's what this project would be. The cost of this project is $28,000, and this could be funded from capital or land reserves.
I have a question, not directly related, but there was mentioned by one of the members of the public, one of the meetings back, that one of these reservoirs had burst, unless I understood it incorrectly. What is the status? We have a member of public here, she wishes to comment on it.
Yeah, I can speak to what happened there. But I won't be able to speak to the technical issues that happened. It was not a burst. I believe there was a piece of equipment that was replaced and that piece of equipment failed.
Transducer.
The transducer, see there. So you have the expertise in-house, you should probably ask them. And the overflow ended up coming into our residents. But you have maybe Rogers.
Yeah, so I believe that transducer is a high alarm, so that failed. And so obviously it didn't shut the pumps down, and it got up into the overflow, which is a natural thing. It should overflow, but unfortunately, it overflowed.
Thank you.
Thank you for how you handled all of that.
Councilor Hammond.
I have just a question for you. The $28,000 that to approve the existing reservoir structure or replacing the structure, is that to investigate?
Yes.
That's not for any replacement or any work? Okay, that's just to do the feasibility study?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, the next project is the geographic information systems and structure data acquisition and integration. Last year we're still in the process of completing a project. We purchased some asset management software as well as GIS software, so we're trying to link our asset management with GIS and our financial information as well. This project it would definitely streamline day-to-day operations because it allows us to use the more modern process and standards for best practices, using today's current technology. So there's a lot of data that we need to collect that we can put into the GIS software. This would definitely benefit all the departments of the municipality, including other ones like 911, law enforcement, the assessor's offices. There's most local governments around the world use GIS. And it provides a vast return on investment, including cost avoidance, time savings, better decision making, increased accuracy, productivity, and revenue.
Are we tied in with our KB GIS?
No.
So in the case of emergency, is there a way to connect them? How do they communicate with the city and the RDK?
As far as emergency purposes go, you wanted to speak to that one?
As far as emergency go, it would be through the EOC, the regional district's emergency plan, their EOC. We have access to both regional districts GIS and what we have through the city.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Watson. No, Councillor Butler. First, yeah, okay.
I'm just wondering if this second stage is independent of the first stage. You don't need this to operate what you've already got.
Well, if this will contribute to what we've already purchased. Like this is kind of an ongoing process. It's going to take us 5 years probably to get to full build out.
And just to follow up on that, I was wondering, so next year, will there be a phase 3?
There may be. Depends how far we get this year, how much data we're able to pick up this year. If we've got most of the data in it, there'll be maintenance, every year. But I probably wouldn't be asking for it every year.
Basically, that's my question. Any other questions? Councillor Hammond?
So just to confirm, you figure it's a 5-year project, cost and upgrade, but it's totally functional now, and the $100,000 will make it totally functional.
Yeah.
It's not like a 5-year project that at the end of 5 years it becomes functional.
No. We will make it functional now. It's just we have to continuously add data to it.
Okay. So you're adding data and continually upgrading the software.
That's
right. So that's part of the cost of upgrading software, the package. Yeah, correct? Is any of this $100,000 part of administering it or operating it, or is it just simply software?
No, it's more of. See, basically what this is we have different layers of information.
Right.
So, we're starting with GIS, which is the software, it's the base program. So, but what we want to do is, add this information, add this information, add this information, and have everything work together.
And how much information have you added so far?
We just started on that process. We actually haven't added anything yet.
Right. So you just have the basic software.
Yeah.
And you haven't operationalized it at all.
No.
Okay.
We're still working from paper.
Okay.
Les Johnson, I'm just curious, last year, a year and a half ago, when this came up, you were talking about having a contracted company with survey grade GPS to do your locations and stuff like that. And down the road, you'd be getting a circuit grade GPS. Have you got that now, or is that still an acquisition in the future?
The only information that we GPS so far was for the water meter project. We had all the curb stops and hydrants and all that picked up.
Okay.
Okay, so Silver Kettle sidewalk. In 2013, the Sunshine Valley Women's Institute submitted a request for sidewalk to be installed on 72nd Avenue, but just in front of Silver Kettle Village. Council considered it, but it wasn't, we were during budget time and we didn't have it in the budget, so it dropped off. They came back again in the fall of 2013 and requested that a sidewalk be installed from 19th all the way to 25th. Well, basically 19th Starters or Foods. And they also came in. And anyway, we also submitted a petition with some 67 signatures on it as well, with other people that were interested in the sidewalk. So the sidewalk does fit within our sustainable community plans guiding principles. It definitely improves mobility, creates a safer environment. So these are the two different costs if we just extended the asphalt or if we actually installed a concrete sidewalk with curb and gutter. And of course, these here would be in addition to each one of these options. So the total would be 175.5 or 84.5, depending on what option council wants.
Councillor Crowe?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I missed something, but it's to go to Extra Foods and it says to remove and reinstate existing chain link fence at Bartlett Park. How does?
Well, because we have to, there's not enough room between the existing edge of asphalt and where that fence is located to actually get a meter and a half pathway. We have to move the fence in. Unless we take it to the other side of the street.
For some reason, I don't think they're, yeah, but obviously, medication maybe.
So this cost, $67,000 for asphalt would take us from 27th, from Extra Foods to 19th, right to the curling rink and arena.
Yeah.
Oh.
On one side.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
I don't know.
Would the contractor that split the project up be interested in sharing any of this cost because it was not initially put in by them?
You mean,
Silver Kettle Development. Has he been approached in other words?
not specifically on that. Normally when we have development, like if it's a subdivision, it's easy to get them to install those types of things, but development's a little bit different. And I mean, if the municipality doesn't have as much hammer.
How long have we been sitting on this project now? I mean, since it's been built approximately 5 months.
Well, since 2012.
2012, so again, we're just receiving this for information, but if there would be a potential of anything happening with the property next door, maybe we could integrate the whole thing on the new contract.
Yes, we thought of that, yes.
That's Ross.
Well, obviously make it wheelchair and walker accessible, we would have to go with the concrete sidewalk option. And I think Grand Forks being well-known as a wonderful place to retire, it seems like a really important thing that we create recreational opportunities for our seniors. I just think it's really important that we help them to be mobile as possible.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you. I support this. I think it's something that's important to that area. My concern is that 72nd Avenue is not totally a gazetted road. Would we be wise to make that a gazetted road and then consider the sidewalk? I just got some reservations on that, and maybe you can allay my concerns. I don't know.
Yeah, we could make it a gazetted right away. I mean, I think that we probably haven't up until now because we own the property.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Yeah, sorry.
It's illegal. It would make it a legal road recognized on the plans. Thank you.
Councilor Crog?
Yeah, did we look at both sides of the road? I know that there's, those costs, if we put it on the Kettle River side, there's existing, development on the other side. So did we look at any cost difference between either side? Like, obviously, if it was the other side of the road, then a crosswalk from Silver Kettle, but it would then tie in more with the aquatic center and stuff, because they're gonna have to cross the road sooner or later. So is there a cost benefit to being on the opposite side?
Well, the only cost benefit would be that we wouldn't have to remove the existing chain link fence then. Right. But the cost to install it, whether it's asphalt or concrete,
Would be the same.
Yeah.
Councilor Hammond?
Just wondering if you could elaborate on the difference between the asphalt and the concrete. There's a substantial difference in price. And I personally like walking on asphalt better. I'm not sure. Can you tell us which one is preferred and why?
Well, the asphalt, I mean, of course, is easier because all we're doing is extending the surface of the road, you know, and then we paint a white line and, you know, there's the line there, so obviously that's cheaper. Concrete is definitely more expensive, but more infrastructure to take care of. So depends if you look at, you know, the benefits of one versus the other. You know, maintenance would still be the same.
I was just thinking like the trails that we have are asphalt. And they're quite easy to maneuver on, whether you're in a wheelchair or a bicycle or walking.
Yeah.
So.
Life expectancy of the two. Like the difference, because obviously if you did go with asphalt, then for the amount we pay for concrete, then you can either obviously double the length at least. So is there life expectancy huge difference?
Not really. I mean, it's not gonna see any vehicular traffic, so life expectancy should, you know, probably be close to the same. Concrete might be a little bit longer. You know, depending on, of course, if it gets, how much salt it sees and that kind of thing.
And did we, is there a side, like, from the highway, the stairs are in, that come down off the highway, does that connect to the, like through a concrete sidewalk to this road? So,
Right now, it doesn't.
okay, so if we did asphalt, we could connect that part too for the residents that, and the reason that crosswalk is there and comes down and everything. Okay, thank you.
Do the concrete costs also include any forms of drainage? Because once you do concrete, you're gonna need drainage for storms and water.
No, and this does not include any.
Is there any projected costs? Because obviously we're gonna need them then.
Well, unless we, I mean, that road's pretty flat, but we'd have to look at that. But I mean, you could always,
Build it or a dry well, because we don't have storm systems in the city.
Yeah.
Councilor Ross.
Are we sure that 1.5 meter is wide enough? If you have a wheelchair or a walker and somebody walking beside that person, is 1.5 meter wide enough for a wheelchair and another person to walk beside them safely without them falling off the side of the?
well,
COTW.
1.5 meter would need to be the minimum. We can always go wider.
Right.
You know, just again, depends on how much infrastructure we want.
Is 1.5 meter standard? Is that the standard?
It used to be the minimum.
It used to be the minimum.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just looking that this is particularly being, is focusing on our elders, that it may have to be a little wider just to accommodate their walkers, their swerving, their and having somebody, so somebody doesn't have to walk in front or behind, that they can actually walk.
Councilor Rushagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we are forgetting one aspect, like I think Councilor Ross was mentioning seniors, primarily seniors. I don't necessarily think that's the case completely, in as much as there's also the gables right there that will be connected.
Yeah.
To that involves just as many residents, but all of which have kids. So you're looking at strollers, you're looking at bikes, and all those kids waiting to take part of the park, to the pool, to the arena, to swim, figure skate, hockey, whatever the case may be, right? So I think we have to make sure that we're also looking at not just wheelchairs, but kids. While they shouldn't be necessarily riding on the sidewalks with their bikes, they're gonna ride on the sidewalks with their bikes.
So obviously, having said that, by using asphalt, we eliminate all the problems with the storm drains because we just extend the road. Is that the idea? And then would we just paint a line of some sort to indicate that it's a sidewalk, or would we put a small berm, or what's the?
Either way, we could even elevate it slightly and have kind of like a little asphalt curb.
But ideally,
But
for
yeah.
the width situation, just go straight across them.
Yeah.
Because then we don't have any of these issues of
That's right.
possible people falling off of it. Councilor Thompson.
I didn't have occasion to go by Purdy School, or pardon me, Hutton School, lately. My kids are grown and gone, but it seems to me that at one time, and I believe the city did, an asphalt sidewalk in that area is.
We actually did a concrete sidewalk.
Oh, you did a concrete sidewalk.
Along 25th from,
On the Hudson side,
yeah.
but not on the other side towards the gate is.
Okay, but then the sidewalk is on, it goes from 22nd Street along 75th to Hutton?
Yes.
And then was there not some requests, and I'm trying to think back now, that because of the way the school buses went, they wanted sidewalks on the other side, and there was talk about putting in an asphalt sidewalk to raise.
That went in concrete, Sasha.
What's that?
That went in concrete
Oh, did it?
from
Okay.
the school to North Fork Road.
Okay, thank you.
Is there also not an asphalt sidewalk, just kitty corner or opposite the Habitat development there, between Kettle River and?
Kettle River and 72nd, there's some.
Is there not a
it's
portion there
asphalt
that's asphalt also?
Curb and asphalt.
I think it was done 2 years ago.
Oh, nice, yeah, we did that section and.
Yeah.
and asphalt.
Seemed to have good results. Councilor Hammond.
I only have one concern, and I like the idea of asphalt for that. But as long as there's something there to stop people from parking or pulling off, if they see that extra piece of roadway, may become part of a parking lane, or just for safety for people on the road. Just a divider or elevated like a regular sidewalk.
Councilor Bunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since we did have quite a large petition come in on this, I'm wondering if there's any way we can take this back to those people at Silver Kettle and give them a chance to look at our plans before we go ahead with it, and then get complaints and snickers afterwards. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions?
Councilor Ross.
I mean, my concern is that it's safe, as much as safe, the cost is important, but that it's safe, and I do have concern about raised sidewalk. and with young people and mothers with strollers and little ones on bikes. And I know that's the case with, all sidewalks, but, raising it so that it's, on a different level to the road. A wheel goes over and elders break a hip or go off on their wheelchairs. I just think, I'm a little concerned about having it raised, so my concern is that it's as safe as possible.
Would there be a major cost factor involved if we left it all level and asphalt and just painted in the form of like a bicycle lane, but put no parking so that
Yeah, no, that's kind of.
like a circle with a P in it, sort of thing, then it's maintains this. Yeah.
Peter Mapp.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, sir.
Peter Matheson. Where typically do the electric scooters ride, and could the little concrete blocks be put down to divide?
Yeah, there's all kinds of options you can look at, for sure, yeah.
Are electric scooters typically on the sidewalk in that kind of situation?
It depends. I've seen them on the sidewalk, I've seen them on the roadway. I think it really depends on where it is and how much traffic there is.
That's what you're shaking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're spending a lot of time here dabbling in the details of this, and I'm assuming, and I could be completely wrong here, that while this is in the budget, before any work was to commence, that we would probably have a request for decision on our final plans where we can hash all this.
Just right.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last one is the UV disinfection at the wastewater treatment plant. Currently, the effluent is disinfected with use of chlorine, and then it is discharged into the Kettle River. We're not actually doing any type of dechlorination, and this actual current method is no longer acceptable under federal and provincial regulations. The chlorine residual, it's a small amount, but the residual that remains in the effluent, it can be toxic to fish and have negative impacts on fisheries resources. So basically at this time, this is one of the projects that we've chosen to apply for the Small Communities Fund grant. Again, it is the grant funds up to 67%, and the city would need to fund 33%, which could be from capital or land reserves. The one thing that we do have to undertake at this time to find out whether we can even use the UV as one of the methods could be looked at through different methods. The UV disinfection was the cheapest method. But we need to undertake the UV transmittance testing on the effluent in order to ensure that the UV light actually does inactivate the bacteria. And basically what that means is the higher the transmittance, the more effective the UV process would be. The cost of this project is $500,000, and again, this would be, it could be funded from capital or land reserves, the remaining 33%.
Any question from Councilor Rowe?
Yeah, I don't know if they would be similar units, but the regional district, I believe, is looking at for the aquatic center coming up in their budgets. So is there like an economy of scale, like if it was one company that was doing both projects, theirs is, could we actually look and see what they're doing?
Yeah.
And if there's any
This is the
chance
regional
to,
district?
yeah, so.
And this is at the
Aquatic center,
aquatic center?
yeah, so Tony. Rec, maybe, or rec center, the person asked. Can't remember how much their project is, obviously it's not this big.
60,000.
Is this a similar UV system as they use on potable water systems?
Similar, yeah.
Very similar, similar concept. The water gets slowed down. Any other questions? Carry on.
So we're briefly summarize for council.
Summary.
Summary, thank you very much. You do have your 2015 capital request spreadsheet with the yellow on it. And that is the summary of all the capital requests we just presented. That's next. Okay. Oh, don't look at the screen yet. So, along, you'll see the funding sources we put along here. Some of them are pretty straightforward. The mower, the cord, etc. They come from the equipment fund. Some of them we've looked at. We'd like to talk to the generator, the water and sewer SCADA. They can be funded from the capital, they could be funded from the land, they could be funded from the slag. Pretty much these projects could be funded from any of those three reserves because they all include capital projects. Oh, look, some nice. Excellent. So you'll see as we get down closer to the bottom of some of these projects, that we had picked slag projects being the JD bleachers, playground replacement, and the silver Kettle sidewalk. Those were picked, they were safety issues and kind of the projects that we saw as legacy projects for the community, but they certainly could be funded differently. The headworks grinder, that's a wastewater grinder. That could also be funded through the rate, through a rate increase that would go directly into the reserve, and then we would fund this from the capital reserve. Because as you can see at the bottom, the reserve balance forward, sorry about the typo on the current net view request. Got my E and my N mixed up, went a little too fast there. But the reserve balance forward, as you can see there, we're getting really low, in fact negative, on the land reserve. So we would still have almost $1 million in reserves. I discussed with council before that it would be nice to have 18 to 20% of our revenues being $10 million-ish. So it'd be nice between surplus and reserves to have $2 million. That would give us a good little net there. This would put us at the million and we would have $1 million in surplus. So it would put us on the average. Being very cautious, I would prefer to see closer to 2.5 in there. I'd like to see this at about $1.5 million just for stability purposes. So to avoid the negative amount at the bottom of the land, we could look at increasing our contributions to reserves through the general fund and through the water and sewer funds. I had suggested to council that I would like to present a policy regarding where the surplus goes into these funds, into each of these reserves. I'd also like that we have one capital reserve, and that's for our general fund, our equipment, our general, our wastewater, our water, and our electrical. They're all bunched into one capital fund. I'd like to create 4 capital funds, one for each fund, so that we're better able to see that each of these funds are self-supporting. Currently, the water and the wastewater funds are funding their operating, but they aren't making any contributions to capital, so we will discuss that at the next meeting.
Councillor Thompson.
Just a comment in support of your establishing the reserve. It's so important. I'm so supportive of that. Because if we don't do it, we're going to be stuck in the same situation that we are today. And regrettably, previous councils, and not just this last one, but I'm talking 30 years ago, didn't have the foresight to do that.
And it's really critical that we start building up these reserves. I think if you look at the current year requests, we're at 1.175 million. This was after management had tamed it down. We had probably almost twice as many requests, and we went and looked at the critical ones and what was legislated and safety factors. But if we're taking $1 million out of our reserves each year, we're going to want to be putting $1 million in. Currently, right now, we're putting, as I had briefly mentioned at the beginning, about $250,000 into our equipment and about $250,000 into our sled. So we're still netting $500,000 short on those, replenishing those reserves. And that isn't taking into account these multi-utility projects that we're looking at.
Manager of Development and Engineering had suggested that we create a reserve specifically for those, which I really agree with that also. So we really need to look at getting these reserves like that. When we reviewed the operating budget, the revenues, I showed that the revenues were getting about $3 million a year in municipal tax. So every project, we need to look at these projects. Every $30,000 on these projects is a 1% tax increase. So we'll I guess discuss in great depth at the next meeting how we would like to fund these, how much we're willing to increase taxes to put into the reserves. And this has been said to me before. Took us 100 years to get here. We're not going to get out of it overnight, but we really do need to start getting ahead. And we're not. So I'd really like to see us start getting ahead on this. There was a question quickly for the financial statement. Sarah Kipping was up at the last meeting about our debt, and so here's our reserves. Here's some money that we can draw for our capital projects. But we can also borrow. Also included in that policy with the reserves would be a policy on debt. A lot of places have policies that say when you're going into a capital project, you'll fund it 60% through your reserves and 40% through debt. So it'd be nice to come up with a policy like that. That is one great thing about the city of Grand Forks is we don't have an extreme amount of debt compared to some of the other municipalities I've seen. Sarah, can you just hold down and we'll kind of get some here. So we had our debt at the end of 2013, and the only additional borrowing we've done since then is on the multi-utility 2014 spending and the West Side Fire Protection. Those are the two borrowing bylaws we have. We did a little bit of spending on those this year. But as of year-end 2013, we had $2.3 million in debt. Really quickly, 1863, that was a roads bylaw for $500,000. That is being funded through a parcel tax that is on the property taxes each year. 1887 was a local area service, and that's being funded through the specific properties that benefited from that, so it's not on the general taxes. 1498 was a sewer extension for Ruckle, and 1873 was the City Park lift station. So 1.7 million for that. So this is our current debt, which isn't a lot, but right now with interest rates being really low, it's not hurting us a lot to service this debt. But it's so easy for interest rates to triple at this point. And I mean, every $30,000, we're paying double that right now. And if they triple, that would translate into double-digit tax increases. So we really have to be careful with that. And I think that is about it. I think the heavy discussion is the next budget meeting. So 2 weeks from today, or 2 weeks from yesterday. Are there any questions on that? Let's eat.
This isn't a pleasant smelling thing to mention, but we had a guest band performing at City Park, and they were commenting on stage about the odor. They were finding it a bit difficult. I don't know that there can be a solution for it, but I just wanted you to know what it's like for some guest bands when they come there sometimes in the summer.
Noted. Manager of Operations noted.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're aware of that, so we are looking at some different options and technology to try and get rid of that.
Yeah.
It's thorn in our side, for sure.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Hopefully that gives you a good summary of what we're looking at for projects this year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We now have our acting chief administrative officer. On the issue of immediately following the committee of the whole meeting, council will hold an in-camera meeting.
Mr. Mayor, we need to receive the budget presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to receive the financial plan review capital projects.
Thank you, Ross. All in favor? Carried.
Excellent job, Adele. I like the way you do the budget presentation.
So, once again,
That's what I used to do.
our acting chief administrative officer.
Oh, are we,
for the committee of
Do
the
we
whole
need
to
to
be holding an
discuss
in-camera
or-
meeting.
Mr. Mayor, it's basically, to get, council's resolution that we're going to be going in camera, following lunch and, section 90 that's mentioned here. And then,
do you want to
yeah,
motion?
we just need a
Councilor Crowe.
Okay, so all in favor? So carried. I would like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Councilor Thompson. So carried. This meeting adjourned.